Hello and welcome back everyone, we Weeb Online, and today I'm gonna continue the story What If Naruto Became a Cyber Demon Part 8. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
Despite Johnny's stomach issues bothering him from the beginning, Meryl and Johnny managed to get themselves in gear quite quickly through some kind of miraculous good fortune. They had limited time, even though Johnny's stomach could turn at any moment. Naruto could not wait for them to get a ride out of there, so he wasn't going to wait around. All of the preparations had to be complete before he extracted Ocelot, or else it would all have been for nothing. The two ran through the park, avoiding paved paths in case they came across a patrol of some sort, as the rain continued to fall more forcefully than before. The real question was whether they could get the helicopter they came for to the field before the enemy realized they were there, but they hoped that once they had the helicopter, they would be able to escape. They both noticed a sentry walking directly towards the edge of the wall at the foot of the stairs as they were about to sprint up to an elevated section of the park to reach their destination via a set of stairs. Before the man on guard could notice them, they pressed themselves up against the wall, which fortunately blocked his view from his little vantage point. Meryl thought to herself, well, this is just great, as she and Johnny remained motionless against the wall to avoid drawing attention from the man above them. How do guys like Snake do this stuff? She asked herself. She thought, I can't reach that high, and I don't have 4 times the vertical leap of an NBA shooting guard. Naruto probably would have just grabbed him and knocked him out by now. Her mind was straining to come up with a sensible solution to this predicament. Johnny's thoughts at the time were different. Man, I'm glad I bought that extra balaclava, it was a total lifesaver earlier. Too bad I never even got to wear it. He then turned to face Meryl, who was serious looking and appeared to be more concerned with their situation than he was. She is seriously well built, he thought to himself as he studied her, wondering why Boss knew so many attractive women. Meryl, Miss Gerlukovich, Wolf. A lot of his friends seem pretty attractive for a guy who doesn't seem to know many people, so what the heck is my excuse? The sound of a fly unzipping reached both of their ears as they were lost in their own thoughts, waiting for a moment of clarity. Then, with a sigh of relief, a stream of pee appeared from above, thankfully landing directly in front of and between them. Meryl was furious and didn't even care that she was getting caught as she sprinted to the top of the wall and up the stairs to get up behind the man who had been keeping watch while Johnny was thanking God that they had been spared being peed on. The man was distracted by relieving himself when he took a punch to the back of his head, which caused him to fall over the wall and land face first in his own puddle. The guard said, what the hell?" as he was about to be knocked unconscious by Johnny's gun after managing to escape. Meryl was standing up on the wall when Johnny looked up at her. She was frowning and cracking her knuckles. "Men are so gross," she muttered, gesturing for Johnny to follow her up the steps and towards the helicopter. After slipping past the guards completely thus far, they eventually reached a small wooded area that outlined the field they intended to head to. Meryl stopped them before they could run into the trees to start moving forward and grabbed Johnny, jerking him back violently to prevent him from running into the forest. "Gaw, what did you stop me for?" Johnny exclaimed. Meryl remarked, gazing intently into the forest, "This is too easy." She thought, wouldn't there be guards posted in the woods too? That's a great place to keep sentries. And we're so close to the helicopter, there would have to be someone around. There had to be, because they were so close that she could see the field less than half a mile away. Any punk kid with instructions ripped from the internet and some free time could have run outside and stolen the damn helicopter if no one else was watching it. As Johnny fiddled with a pair of binoculars strapped to his head on the outside of his balaclava, he said, hold on." After a while, he was able to put it down over his face and press a button while looking through the trees and saying, "Oh." That sounded bad to Meryl. What do you see?" she asked. As he briefly raised his optic device, Johnny said, "I see explosives all over the place in there. We're in the middle of a city. Don't these people care about that? I know that this place is more or less abandoned, but what if someone went through there someday? That's dangerous." He wasn't sure if anyone would clean up after themselves once Olympus left the area. Meryl said dryly, "Your honorable nature has been noted. Now how do we get through it? I can't see." She made a valiant effort to narrow her eyes in order to see some of the explosives that Johnny was referring to. but she was unable to see anything. Well, my goggles are special. They can zoom in like binoculars or they can switch to a thermal mode. I can see claymores hidden with stealth camouflage with these, Johnny said, tapping the scope over his face. And right now I can see claymores all over the place. Johnny then turned to face the trees. Meryl let out a little growl of sorrow before continuing, "Can you find us a safe way through the forest to the helicopter?" Johnny answered, "I can try." How would they proceed? Simply take a seat and move aside. If a swift escape was required, this was the best way to find a ride out of Lyon, and it most definitely would be. Keeping that in mind, they started walking around the periphery of the small forest in search of a secure entrance. XXX in partnership with Naruto. When he dispatched his sly stalker at the building site, he found it easy to navigate the darkened industrial district. Periodic reports from Wolf said the whole riverbank was making way for vehicles. She said she would let him know in the interim, even though she had no idea why. In any case, he was getting closer to the structure where the two rivers converged, which was where most of the action was expected to take place. He didn't mind getting soaked through to the bone by the rain at all, but when he arrived at the enormous structure at the intersection of the two rivers, he realized it was time to enter and capture an ocelot. Fortunately for him, the two sides of the big building that weren't on the riverbanks were packed in close proximity to other structures, creating tiny passageways that prevented him from having to walk on the ground and run the risk of being noticed from a distance. He could take the rooftops and make the jump over to the target roof, which is exactly what he did. The issue with that, though, was that as he approached fairly closely via rooftop progression, he noticed that sentries were frequently stationed on the roofs. The roofs were also well lit, which led to a fully lit building that was situated at the riverside's edge. This compelled Naruto to hide behind a ventilation system that was affixed to his roof in an attempt to come up with a plan for getting past to the main building. Then he realized he had the best long-range cover he could hope for in a sniper Wolf, so he called her on the other line and put himself on his codec. "Wolf, can you see over here?" he asked. Seemingly prepared for anything, Wolf said, "Absolutely, little Proby. Do you need my help?" In an attempt to save face, Naruto said, "Help is a very strong word for what I need, Wolf." He was surveying the ventilation system to get a good view of every sentry, adding, "How many do you see? I've got 6 from my view. I see 7 on the roofs near you. You're missing one of them somewhere, but I don't know what you can see." Wolf clarified for him before her tone became serious. "But do not go anywhere the edge of the target building roof's backsides near the rivers. They're crawling with dozens of Olympus mercenaries. If you are discovered by them, then we might as well call this mission a failure right now." It was simple to understand that much. His greatest weapon was surprise. Without it, there would be no other option. When Ocelot saw him approaching, he would try to run away. There was no reason to stay at this rinky-dink riverside shipping warehouse, and he wasn't the type of guy to stay and fight for nothing. Hell, before it was all over, Ocelot fled from Shadow Moses. For now, though, he had to reach that central storage facility. The dreadful floodlights atop the buildings were going to be a headache. Perhaps the cyborg ninja was right to use covert camouflage after all. He shook his head, saying, "No way," as he reached into his storage pouch and took out a fist full of shuriken. A cheap trick for those who are unable to hide is using stealth camouflage. Naruto thought of his current situation and said, "Wolf, how many do you think you can get without setting off an alert?" He didn't need that kind of gimmick, reasoning that, even when you do hide, if someone's attentive enough they can still catch you. Without hesitation, she said, 3. You have a plan?" Naruto couldn't just rush them and hope for the best because he could see that they were arranged in a formation on the rooftop that would allow them to see if anything went wrong with one of them. And now all 7 of the guards were visible to him. Luckily, he was able to replicate himself 5 more times. As he positioned 4 clones behind his chosen cover, Naruto commanded, "Hit whoever you can, but don't fire a single shot until you see me and my clones move. We'll get whoever you can before they even get their radios on to report shots fired and men down." That would require extremely precarious timing. In order to prevent the others from reporting and responding to Wolf's shots, Wolf would need to fire just as Naruto approached too closely. However, she would need to time her shots so that no one would see him before he approached too closely and was eventually noticed, asking, "That's a very bold approach. Are you sure?" Naruto gave her the order, "Go ahead and pop your pills, Wolf. It's game time." If you're Soraya, and I am going to get you for that remark later, little Proby. With their shuriken ready to go, Naruto and his clones stood up and readied their multi-pronged attack. We're going in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, now! They exclaimed as they leapt over the ventilation system and split up, landing on different rooftops to eliminate the enemy. Wolf decided to eliminate the targets that were farthest from Naruto since she wasn't sure if he would be able to reach them quickly enough after attracting their attention if she shot the ones that were closest to him. She had already set her sights on her first target. The first man actually went down first. She could see the whites of his eyes actually widening as he saw one of Naruto's clones in action. At the same moment that Naruto's clone threw its fistful of shuriken, tearing into its target's neck, Wolf fired her first shot, hitting her target just above the brow. "You're next," she thought to herself as she loaded her next bullet and fired, striking the man in the side of the head from her position across the river. The target had seen two Narutos take down two different rooftop sentries. While preparing for her next move, she witnessed the final two Narutos use HF blades to dispatch their guards. However, she noticed that he was moving much more quickly than she had anticipated for his clones, saying, "He is far faster without all of his equipment weighing him down." Fortunately for her in the operation, the final enemy man was close enough to Naruto and his clones for the last two to attack their targets to throw shuriken at him. They hit him exactly once, destroying his radio and deeply stabbing his body with the sharp metal stars. The man gave voice to a low moan of pain, but before he could aim his mini Uzi with the dozen shurikens strewn all over his body, Wolf shot him, knocking him down. "Clear," she called to Naruto through her headset, and he instantly dispelled all of his clones that were strewn across the rooftops everywhere. When his memories from all of his clones returned, Naruto answered over his codec, "Clear." Thinking about how close that could have been cut made him let out a sigh. "Okay. Let me find a way into this place so I can start poking around." Could have been the facility's reaction if the final guard had been able to fire off a few rounds. "Understood." Wolf responded, "I will keep my eyes on the riverside concrete dock since Johnny and Meryl are out of my range. I have a bad feeling that something will come up very soon." A bad feeling wasn't just paranoia, as every bad feeling that Naruto or anyone close to him has ever experienced has eventually translated into some truly awful news for him or those close to him. If Wolf had a premonition, he had to get himself in gear and move quickly because she was particularly perceptive. Naruto proceeded to one of the shipping warehouse's alley backsides and, despite the warehouse's disrepair, discovered a fire escape and a door that wasn't connected to any alarm system. The building barely had enough electricity to run the roof-mounted floodlights in the first place. Though, as if that would really be a problem for him, it was still locked from the outside. If necessary, he could pick a lock with his teeth. Naruto was able to escape the rain in a matter of seconds when the door clicked open, and he moved quickly enough inside to prevent puddles from forming at the entrance. Even in the upper-level office area of the building where Naruto was located, the warehouse had dim lighting. Just as he started to creep through the corridors, a door on his right opened. Naruto remained motionless until he noticed a figure move out from behind the door. Naruto leapt to his feet, slamming the man into the wall while holding his throat shut to prevent him from screaming. Holding his first target in place, he launched a back kick that knocked the man who had advanced to attack him back into the room he was about to exit. The man eventually blacked out from the pressure of Naruto's strong forearm on his carotid artery, allowing Naruto to knock him to the ground and enter the open space where he had kicked his other opponent. Above all, before the man could aim at Naruto, he kicked the Uzi out of his hand. He was taken aback by Naruto's unadulterated strength and speed, leaving him open to a blow that would have turned out his lights. After eliminating his opponents, Naruto went outside and grabbed the man to drag him into the room they were in. Naruto turned to look around and realized they were in a break room, most likely meant for warehouse workers during the times the warehouse was actually in use. Before leaving the room, he placed the two unconscious bodies in a single locker that was positioned along the right wall and closed it. XXX with Meryl and Johnny. Meryl was happy as she and Johnny stealthily made their way from the wooded area into the unkempt, overgrown field that contained the helicopter they were pursuing. As it happened, Johnny turned out to be pretty handy. She kept falling into the claymores because he kept pointing out where the explosives were in the woods. Man, Naruto assigned simple tasks. When working with him, if this was all she had to do, She would run through the damn rain at any time. What a simple detail. What's the big deal, Johnny boy? Interrupted her as Johnny stopped her from moving forward toward the helicopter that was parked in the middle of the field. With his goggles still covering his face, Johnny shushed her quickly and said, in a low voice, "There's someone out here with us." He pointed to the helicopter. The realization seemed to take Meryl by surprise. "What?" she asked. "Why didn't you say that before we got close to the damn helicopter?" The thermal vision enhanced Meryl was even more intimidating than usual, so Johnny retreated, his hands in a disarming defensive position, saying, "Hey, I was watching for all of the explosives in the woods. I couldn't pay attention to a chopper half a mile away. The thermal vision isn't even set to zoom in. These aren't normal scopes when I use the other attachments. You two talk too much." A person emerged from the transport helicopter's passenger compartment while the two young soldiers were occupied with their own conversation. The man appeared, a large man with long dreadlocks, a black flak vest, and a balaclava resembling a human skull. He was carrying strange-looking grenades strapped all over his equipment, and he said, "But you both got through the claymores I set in the woods with no problem, so I guess I have to deal with you now." His sunglasses covered his face, making it impossible for them to see his eyes. Meryl reached for one of her Desert Eagles and said, "You're damn right you have to deal with us. Of course you could just give us the chopper and we don't have to do anything." The Olympus mercenary calmly stated, "And you both could just leave," not even fazed by Meryl and Johnny pointing their weapons at him. "But neither of you will. No one ever does. So it's time to get rid of you." As he finished speaking, he dove back into the passenger section of the helicopter, and both Meryl and Johnny fired at him, missing. "You've got to be faster than that, brats," the man replied, as two grenades flew over the craft from where the man jumped out on the other side. Johnny and Meryl both quickly separated to avoid the grenades that were thrown at them because they were not foolish enough to stand there while something was flying at them from someone else. It was a good thing they did, because the white chemical that the detonating grenades released shot and billowed up from the area, leaving small areas of the ground ignited. Meryl ran as far away from it as she could, dropping her jaw at the sizzling noise and exclaiming, "That bastard is using white phosphorus." "Isn't that illegal?" Johnny asked, getting up from the dive and putting his goggles back up to cover his balaclava. "I thought it was against ground warfare laws to employ WP against personnel targets. It should at least be regulated, right?" Johnny followed up. Before hurling another white phosphorus at Johnny, the man who had thrown the grenades mocked him from his cover on the other side of the helicopter. "It's not illegal, stupid, and even if it was, do I look like I care? I'm not a part of any country's regular forces. I'm a mercenary. Grow up and smarten up or lay there and die." Johnny stumbled to his feet, scurried to his feet, and bolted from the burning grenade, letting out a terrified cry as he went. However, as Meryl turned around the front of the helicopter to aim her Desert Eagle at the Olympus mercenary, she discovered that he was leaning against the helicopter and pointing a grenade launcher in her direction. A moment later, Meryl leapt sharply back to the helicopter's starting side as her enemy attempted to blow her up with an explosion in front of her. She chose to land hard on her back and shielded her face to ensure she would not sustain too much shrapnel damage. It was certainly preferable to being blasted to bits. "What a shot," she thought to herself as she hurriedly stood back up and examined her injuries. He fired that with one free hand. From the hip. At this point, she realized she would have to abandon the belief that this would be a simple mission. "Meryl, are you all right?" Johnny asked, turning around abruptly and heading back towards the chopper that marked the center of the field, after hearing an explosion that wasn't aimed at him. "I'm fine," she reassured him as she saw the enemy peep through the helicopter's open passenger door. "Who is this guy?" she muttered as she continued to aim in case he showed himself again. She fired her Desert Eagle, missing and making him seek cover once more. The man yelled, "You can call me Hephaestus." He then continued, "Not that it really matters, but you should have a name to go with the face of the one that's going to kill you." He then pointed his grenade launcher through the passenger doors and fired directly at Meryl, who gasped before Johnny tackled her to the ground. This allowed the shot to miss and pass them, exploding a few feet away with them out of its blast radius. "So you can run, duck, and hide. That's something worth mentioning, I guess," Hephaestus remarked mockingly as he reloaded his grenade launcher. "Are you all right?" Johnny asked, getting a nod in response, As they both kept one eye on the helicopter Hephaestus was hiding behind in case he surprised them with an attack. "Man. This rain is really giving me a cold," he said before sneezing, fortunately with his balaclava preventing it from spraying on Meryl. "This really isn't going to help my stomach." Meryl shot him an extremely disbelieving look and said, "We're being attacked by some guy with a grenade launcher and white phosphorus hand grenades, and you're still on about your stomach?" To which Johnny retorted, "Well, you can deal with that if we survive this," as another white phosphorus grenade blasted toward them from above. Johnny cried back, "I don't think I can hold it for that long," as he continued to run, his boots squishing in the damp grass beneath him with each stride. Meryl screamed, "Then hurry up and let's beat this guy already," as she noticed Hephaestus emerge from hiding once more, providing her with a target to shoot at. "I fucking want you to drop dead, damn it. I am not getting paid enough for this," she said. Johnny gave up on him as Meryl tried to hit Hephaestus by firing through any open space she could see. Instead of wasting time reloading, she switched to her backup Desert Eagle when her ammunition ran out, saying, Meryl, I don't think I have that much time left here. The faster this ends the sooner you can take your stupid crap. Now get your shit together and let's finish this. Sniper Wolf and Naruto are waiting." Meryl growled at her partner before sprinting to avoid another grenade launcher shot. From behind his skull face mask, Hephaestus snickered, saying, "If you two are done talking about someone's upset stomach." He never really got a chance to finish, as it seems Johnny chose to eschew caution and disregarded the grenade launcher that was ready to defend Hephaestus at any time. Hephaestus saw only panic and excruciating pain in the young man's eyes, and he felt it immediately when Johnny pulled his AKS-74U and opened fire. Although Johnny's aim was too unpredictable to be precise, most of his shots found their target. In addition to shooting Hephaestus, he also seriously damaged a few of the grenades that were fastened to him, causing the explosive devices to detonate while still attached to him and covering him in white phosphorus that quickly started to burn. At the sound of Hephaestus's cries of excruciating pain reverberating across the field, Meryl went running around the other side of the helicopter. She saw firsthand what that specific chemical reaction could do to a person's body when his balaclava and clothes burned off, exposing him to be a black man. His tissue started to burn in front of her eyes as he writhed on the ground in agony, and that was all she could handle. She turned her head instantly and kept firing at Hephaestus with her Desert Eagle until her clip ran out. Meryl took a few deep breaths to calm herself down, thinking to herself, that could have been one of us. What a horrible way to die, but even then she didn't turn back towards him. Instead, she moved towards the other side of the helicopter with her hand over her mouth. She had never really seen the face of someone who had passed away. Every Genome soldier at Shadow Moses wore a balaclava, and Psycho Mantis was even seen wearing one when he passed away. Even when Naruto killed Liquid in front of her, he unintentionally blocked Solid Snake's and her view of his gory end. However, dying from white phosphorus burns must be an entirely different level of terrible demise. In that situation, it was merciful to shoot him because if she hadn't, things would have turned out much worse for him. Whatever was done, well, was done. Perhaps returning to work would help her forget about Hephaestus's demise. She heard an explosion coming from the wooded area around them. That was fortunate because it meant that with all of the explosives strewn throughout the forest, the other people stationed throughout the area would also be unable to completely navigate it. "Johnny?" she asked, attempting to remove the nervousness from her voice. "I think it's time to get this bird into the air and get out of here." It was clear that it was time to leave. From the other side of the helicopter, Johnny said, "Please give me a minute. Don't come over here either." He then let out a pained groan and continued, "Man. This was my last balaclava too." His stomach churning noise was followed by another voice. Meryl grimaced and got into the helicopter, closing the passenger door and waiting for Johnny to arrive in the hopes that he would move quickly. "Still gross," she said. XXX alongside Riverside Transport Warehouses Naruto. The path led down a few hallways before emerging onto a balcony and catwalk that provided views of the warehouse's main area. Naruto chose to stay in the shadows as he heard voices beneath him, refusing to stop running and instead leaping from the catwalk up into the structural metal parts of the warehouse ceiling to avoid being seen. Beneath him in the main part of the warehouse, everything was empty save for a few abandoned enormous metal shelves and a big stack of metal transport crates similar to those found on ships, but there was a strong medicinal smell, almost like disinfectant, in the air. Naruto seemed to have just recently become aware of something going on in there, given the amount of equipment that appeared to be being shipped out the back of the building in the direction of the river. From his perch in the rafters, Naruto thought to himself, damn, they're clearing the place out. It appeared that Olympus had outgrown their temporary quarters in the warehouse, and they were making haste to leave. He ignored this and turned his attention to the voices below. Leading the way through the warehouse was a bearded man with gray hair wearing a dark suit. Sorry about the clutter, Ocelot, the man said in a thick Eastern European accent, but you're leaving tonight, aren't you? Are you sure I can't interest you in any prosthetic parts? I can assure you that you would be far happier that you would be with what you chose to replace your right arm with. He was wearing a dark hat and a tan tie, keeping his glasses out of Naruto's clear view. The man appeared to be observing the Olympus mercenaries who were taking equipment of all shapes and sizes out of the building. Arm. As he listened in, Naruto said to himself, I thought Gray Fox only cut his hand off? Why did he have to have his entire arm amputated and replaced? In keeping with the doctor's statement, Ocelot's entire right arm was shielded by a thick, heavy cast and sling. Well, in the end it was my choice, Dr. Markov, Ocelot said to the man guiding them through the warehouse. Perhaps you could interest my associate here in some of your artificial creations, however. A rather physically imposing man, who appeared to be around Ocelot's age, followed behind him. He was wearing a dark trench coat. Turning to face the man who was following Ocelot, Markov said thoughtfully, It would be an honor for the last president of the United States to take an interest in some of my equipment. So what do you think? You've seen quite a bit of my work since you and Ocelot have been in Lyon for his surgery. Don't refer to me as any sort of president, again, the man said with a serious tone. Being referred to as a president just says that I was once their figurehead pawn. From now on, if you are to call me anything, I am Solidus Snake, the perfect copia. Is that Leader Sears? Is he another snake, too? Up in the rafters, Naruto thought to himself. His eyes narrowed on the man with Ocelot. And what does he mean he's a perfect copy? An exact replica of Big Boss. Naruto had heard about Big Boss for years, but he had never seen a picture of the man or even known the full extent of his powers. If Naruto had to describe him at all, it would be as an urban legend. Naruto's main worry at the time wasn't that, though. What the hell is the old president doing here? Shortly after Shadow Moses went public, Sears quit. Not too long afterward, the book written by Natasha Romanenko, on which Naruto had provided feedback, was published, revealing a great deal about that particular incident. Even though it was greatly edited, a plethora of information that the public would not have otherwise known was revealed. And your chance to get them back will come, don't you worry. Ocelot seemed to reassure him. The plans are going smoothly. It's only a matter of time now until we get the desired reaction we had anticipated. Every crackpot nation or any engineer with the right amount of cash can get the plans to Rex to make their own imperfect copy. We were paid handsomely for offloading the plans onto the black market. That woman's book romanticized Rex as a truly terrifying weapon that others would jump at. Good. Solidus replied with a grin on his face. Very good, and now we wait. When the Patriots make their move in response to all of the pirated Metal Gear derivatives in the world that could risk their power, then we'll proceed to move forward. You already have a plan in place? Drive Markov asked, raising an eyebrow behind his glasses, looking quite impressed if that scenario came to pass. Replied, of course. It's bare bones to say the least, but once things are placed into motion it will more or less set itself up. For now I have to go into hiding to avoid their agents, but the Patriot grip on the US will crumble one day and return to the fundamental idea of freedom it was meant to be. He turned to face the man approaching him. Yes, Helios? You have news for me? Markov laughed as one of his mercenaries approached him and the group. Well, if that happens to be the case, then leave me out of it. I don't want to involve myself in any kind of open conflict like that. I just want the money to further my research, and Olympus more than provides me with that. This was merely a job. Helios was a very tall, thin man with a lot of muscle, short brown hair, and a tribal tattoo on the side of his neck in addition to numerous facial scars. Since he was not wearing a shirt, his numerous scars on his torso were visible, including two large, dark scars in the middle of his chest that were roughly octagonal in shape and located at his shoulders. He had a black boot, leather gloves, a red bandana wrapped around his right arm, and a thick pair of dark blue pants with supplies and grenades slung over his belt and down both legs. He sounded really bored and unmotivated as he said, "Dr. Markov, the supplies are all loaded and ready to be transported." Helios spoke in a low voice tinged with an Australian accent. "We can leave whenever you're ready to go." Markov didn't seem to notice, though, as he looked around in a seemingly vacant manner. "Excellent," Markov remarked, turning to face Solidus and Ocelot. "I think our business is over, gentlemen," he said. "Markov, don't spend all of your money in one place," Ocelot laughed, smirking at him. "Oh Ocelot, I always do," Markov laughed back, gesturing for them to follow. "Come, let us continue to wait for your transport in my limousine outside. It should be here any minute, yes?" Markov asked, turning to face Helios. "Helios, please do one last check of the warehouse and contact Karen, Hephaestus, and Bishamontan. It's time for us to clear the area." Helios grunted to indicate that he understood Markov's instructions, prompting another chuckle from Markov as he, Ocelot, and Solidus departed to go outside. After he was gone, Helios just stood there and stared up at the rafters. Even though Naruto could swear he was staring at him, he was not able to see him with his unaided eyes. There was not a speck of light up there. Not even Naruto made an appearance up there. He knew exactly how to hide. Following a brief interval, Helios commanded the remaining Olympus mercenaries in the warehouse, "All of you get out now," he declared without wiggle room. "All of Dr. Markov's gear is outside. You lot don't need to be in here anymore." Helios's gaze remained fixed on the rafters where Naruto was sitting, even as mercenaries charged towards him. "Sir, are you sure that we should?" the man asked as soon as Helios grabbed him by the throat with one of his hands. The man was choked severely and had to put down his mini Uzu while he desperately tried to grab Helios's arm to release some of the pressure and get some air. With a hint of bitterness in his voice, Helios said, "I said leave," as he stared up at Naruto, not even looking at the man he was strangling, even though he could feel the pressure on his neck from his grasp. "Killing you means nothing to me, just so you know. No matter what I do, Markov will keep me around. I could kill every last one of you if I wanted to, and nothing would happen to me because I'm worth his entire unit. I just don't do it because killing you all would be so laughably easy it wouldn't be worth the time," Helios said, throwing him to the ground. This time, the man on the ground left the area right away, clearing out without second thought. Helios noticed that he did not even bother to pick up his gun because, before the man could even manage to escape, he pulled out his own mini Uzi and fired at him, killing him without a word. The man was hit in the back. As he heard the wounded man start to laugh below, Naruto grit his teeth in the rafters and watched Helios kill his own comrade. "Well, he served a purpose. He was a warm-up," Helios remarked before raising his mini Uzi to the rafters and firing at Naruto. He emptied the remainder of his clip, grinning as he watched Naruto slip through the shadows and easily avoid his shots. "You're the main event," he said. Naruto fired from the rafters at Helios after calling him the main event, but Helios dodged the shot with such speed that the force of his legs cracked the concrete floor beneath him. "What the fuck?" Naruto thought to himself as he observed Helios' quick movements. The way his limbs moved in blurs reminded Naruto of Grey Fox's portrayal of the cyborg ninja. "Markov did that damn exoskeleton crap to you?" Naruto asked angrily. When it came to involuntary experimentation, he was a hothead. Laughing, Helios taunted as he stopped on the ground, staring up at Naruto in the rafters. "Someone didn't like being a guinea pig, did they? I wanted this." Helios grabbed a large metal crate, actually peeling off some of the hull with his bare hands, as if it were made of tin foil. Then he hurled the sharp piece of metal into Naruto's rafters with enough force to break the ceiling supports. Because Helios simply ran at the shelf and slammed into it with his entire body, knocking it and the others behind it over like a stack of dominoes. Naruto wisely leapt down from the rafters and landed on one of the room's massive metal shelves. However, this wasn't safe either. Accurately timing the shelves tipping over, Naruto rolled through the floor and spun to fire a few more shots at Helios, who was running out of sight again while yelling hysterically, "Kage Bunshin no Jutsu Shadow Clone Jutsu." In order to deal with Helios, Naruto created 5 duplicates of himself and sent them out. Suddenly, 3 of the 5 clones launched an assault on the man. He took advantage of a clone's flying kick and used his own strength to spin around in a circle and smash another clone with such force that they were both eliminated. Helios staggered back as the third clone managed to land a powerful punch akin to a haymaker. Using this as an opportunity, Naruto and his two surviving clones advanced. While the final two clones surrounded Helios and joined the third clone in an attempt to kick him into the air, the original Naruto leapt off of his third clone's back as high as he could go, exclaiming, "You! Zu! Ma! Ki!" Since there was no fourth clone to cover Helios's blind spot from behind, every kick was blocked. After they hardly succeeded in lifting him off the ground, Helios remarked, "That's a weird party trick. Nice try though. Maybe if I wasn't so powerful that would have gotten me." He then dispelled the clones' kicks by brushing them off and taking a swing at one. The other two clones instantly vanished, and when Helios raised his head, he saw Naruto holding a blue ball of energy. The young blonde attempted a Rasengan, but all it accomplished was pulverize the concrete floor and leave a telltale spiral where impact had occurred. She quickly dodged out of the way of the falling Naruto. With a heightened burst of speed, Naruto pushed off from his attempt at a jutsu, using the momentum that a Rasengan would provide in reverse. With lightning speed, Naruto closed in on Helios and slashed him viciously with his HF blade. Then, he spun around and kicked Helios in midair, sending him flying and making him bounce like a football off the top corner of the pile of metal containers in the middle of the room before vanishing over the other side. Going head to head with Helios would be more trouble than it would be worth, Naruto told himself. I don't need to fight this guy. Since he didn't have the mission, he made the snap decision to make a tactical retreat to the riverbank in order to simply kidnap Ocelot and leave. Though it might not be that simple, it was preferable to giving him more time to leave. Nor was this fight particularly quiet. "You've got to be kidding me," he said to himself as he turned to leave the warehouse and heard the creaking sound of metal. His eyes widened as he stared at the top of the stack of metal crates in the center of the space. Naruto wasn't worried by Helios' frantic expression when he stood up. Instead, he was bothered by the fact that he was holding one of the crates above his head and grinning evilly at Naruto. The doors to the riverside flew open before he could throw the crate at Naruto, and a dozen Olympus mercenaries poured in, firing at him as he ducked behind the overturned metal shelves for cover. Taking offense at this, Helios turned to face the other Olympus hired guns. Then, with great rage, he threw the crate at them, hitting several of them and even completely crushing a few, but he made contact with every one of them. "If you weaklings don't stay out of my fight, I'll kill you before I kill him. My body can't be stopped," Helios yelled to the top of the warehouse until someone landed on his level of crates he happened to be standing on. He threw the crate so hard it ripped a hole in the warehouse's metal wall and poked outside a bit. As he turned around, he caught a glimpse of Naruto's enraged face behind his face mask before his black-gloved fist filled his vision. Naruto started off with a vicious punch that didn't manage to knock Helios off his feet. He then kept hitting his face with blows until he started to steadily backpedal toward the end of the metal crates. Naruto wasn't even expecting a counterattack when Helios managed to catch one of his punches firmly in the palm of his hand, but he was planning a vicious combination once he managed to knock Helios from the containers. Naruto became alarmed upon sensing Helios's firm grip on his fist. Helios said with a bloodied face as he jerked Naruto towards him and gave a return punch that gave Naruto the impression that he had walked straight into an iron door. He could actually hold him back. "My turn." After that, Helios unleashed his own combination of moves on Naruto, but they were more powerful. He used long, lunging hooks to twist Naruto's head back and forth and, if he sensed that the boy was backing away from him too soon, he would grab him by the long arms and pull him back into a body knee. When Naruto realized how powerful Helios was, he was initially immobilized. However, he was able to regain focus when he realized that Helios had cybernetic enhancements, much like Grey Fox. At Shadow Moses Island, he had witnessed Grey Fox's strength firsthand, though he had never taken a punch from him. If Naruto were to accept this assault without striking back, he would be damned. After taking another blow, Naruto twisted through with the hook and struck Helios in the face with a roundhouse kick that deflected his blow and knocked him off balance as he staggered back to avoid falling. Naruto thought, "Okay, enough fucking around," and he started removing the throwing knives from the inside of his pants and hurling them at Helios. It was time to call this brief encounter off. As Helios tried to defend himself with his arms, every single small weapon struck him, though the ones that struck his arms seemed to bounce off of him. Naruto didn't really notice that much with the intensity of the rest of his attack. After launching a barrage of throwing knives, Naruto pulled out his HF blade and used one arm to slay Helios. He then spun around and launched another vicious surprise attack with his right hand, calling it Rasengan Spiraling Sphere. Similar to how Naruto's HF blade attack struck Helios in his arms, the blue spinning orb of energy struck him. Since the start of Naruto's vicious attack, Helios had been holding his arms up in a X formation. When Naruto hit him with the Rasengan, Helios was flung through the air and his body struck the warehouse wall with such force that the metal wall paneling took a deep dent the size and shape of Helios's body. With his arms still extended from thrusting with the Rasengan, Naruto simply stood there and stared at Helios, watching as the man slowly pulled himself out of the wall and fell face first to the ground before starting to get back up. Naruto saw Helios roll over to his back and move, so he gritted his teeth under his face mask. He ran towards the end of the containers and leapt into the air, slamming another Rasengan into Helios's chest and yelling, "Die!" The impact caused a low, boom, noise and cracked the ground beneath Helios. Rather than pulverizing Helios into the ground as he had expected, Naruto discovered that the man had removed his Rasengan hand from his target and was holding Naruto's arm back with both of his own. Helios's chest had severe, deep tissue damage, and the skin on his arms appeared to have been severely damaged, exposing mechanical components beneath. Even though it was only for a brief second, Naruto had struck Helios squarely in the chest with the Rasengan, which was why his torso was damaged. With utter shock, Naruto glanced down at Helios, the Rasengan in his withheld hand fading. The skin and tissue around the octagon-shaped scar in the middle of his chest had peeled away to reveal a metal object embedded squarely inside Helios's body, glowing red with each heartbeat. "Is that a power generator?" he asked himself. With horror, Naruto thought to himself. Helios, sensing that Naruto was paying attention, grinned and held onto his arm with both hands. "Impressive, isn't it, ninja boy?" he exclaimed, seeming to tighten his grip with one hand. "You're the first one to see this since it's been put in." He then swiftly took one of the guns out of Naruto's thigh holsters and rammed it into the blonde's shoulder of his Rasengan arm. "Congratulations," he said before firing the SOCOM into Naruto's shoulder multiple times. XXX alongside Sniper Wolf A over the Sani River A Notre Dame de Forvia Diaresis Re Basilica. Wolf gritted her teeth and watched as a small private plane came into view, descending more and more as it tried to align its descent on the brilliantly lit and crystal clear Sani riverbank. Someone was going to go in that manner. They wouldn't be able to take another shot at Ocelot with such ease anytime soon if that managed to take off. With the man squarely in her sights, Wolf's trigger finger was itching badly, and the instructions were extremely specific about getting Ocelot alive. She had to aim her scope away from him to try to get rid of the urge to shoot him because he was standing in the open, in the rain, next to Dr. Markov and another man wearing a trench coat. He had no idea she was there, and it would have been so simple. "What on earth are you doing in there, little Proby?" they asked, appearing a little preoccupied with whatever was going on inside the nearby warehouse. Markov's orders kept the Olympus mercenaries from entering, even though it was obvious that Naruto was at the center of whatever was happening. He appeared to be reassuring the man accompanying Ocelot that whatever was occurring within was under control. She paused to look at the man Ocelot was with, gasping aloud, "Saladin," as she retreated from her rifle in disbelief. The man resembled Big Boss in his later years, much as Solid Snake resembled him in his youth. She looked through the scope again after gathering herself and said, "No, it's not Saladin." This Big Boss imposter had both of his eyes. The real Big Boss had been wearing an eye patch to hide the fact that he was missing his right eye. Wolf could only stare in awe at this man's appearance, though she could tell he wasn't Big Boss. She could only stare as the plane touched down. Not only did he look like Big Boss, though, she could not quite place it, but she knew this man from somewhere. But it was getting to her. She ought to have known who that person was. But for the time being, Naruto wasn't answering her calls on his codec, so she was unable to reach him through her headset. If that were the case, he must have been in serious danger because he was unable to stop and engage in conversation with her. Olympus mercenaries were helping to turn the plane around and get it ready for takeoff when it was at the far end of the makeshift runway. Dr. Markov, The Big Boss impersonator and Ocelot started to make their way over to the private jet. Since Naruto hadn't yet picked up, Wolf thought to herself, "Come on, Naruto. You have to hurry up." XXX in the interim, with Naruto stumbled back, clutching his shoulder and biting his face mask so hard that the fabric tore apart around his face as he tried not to cry out in agony. 6 years prior, Sasuke had taken a Chidori to the shoulder. It didn't hurt all that much, mostly because the lightning from the attack numbed the point of penetration. Now that he had been shot 8 times in a row in the same spot, his shoulder was just a useless piece of hanging meat. After throwing the last of Naruto's SOCOM magazine into his shoulder, Helios released his hold on Naruto's arm and started laughing loudly from his back, not even bothering to stand up to counterattack him. With his back leaning against the piled metal receptacles, Naruto finally yelled, "Fuck!" clutching his shoulder wound firmly. "What the fuck are you? I carved into your chest and you're still fucking alive," he yelled at Helios. "That's a good question," Helios said, gesturing to the power generator in his chest. "My limbs were totally mangled in Hong Kong when I worked for Interpol. A nasty bit of business with a drug cartel a year or so ago." He banged on his legs and laughed, acknowledging Naruto's calls for him to stop. "But old Dr. Markov, he fixed me right up for free. Though it was just so he could experiment with some new high-performance replacement limbs," he said, acknowledging Naruto's calls for attention. With his hand pressed firmly against the wound, blood spurting out of his shoulder through his fingers, Naruto hissed lowly, "And the glowing red time bomb in your chest?" He could probably reach in through the back of the wound with 2 fingers. Helios said, "My limbs took too much energy to power. More than my body could provide by itself without sapping all of my bioenergy." He then rolled onto his back and sprang up to his feet with a rather carefree gait, starting to pull the throwing knives Naruto had hit him with out of his torso, grunting as each one was wrenched free. "So he placed this little perpetual generator in my body. Every move I make powers my limbs, making every step I take, and every breath I give. Every motion my body gives off powers my special features. The side effect is that with all of that energy I can't sleep, and my body never really comes to a rest. That's why I want to fight difficult battles." Even though he observed evidence of global technological progress on a daily basis, he was still unable to fully understand something of this magnitude. And once they learned about his abilities, when guys like Helios were all over the place due to science, people would label him as a freak. Because he couldn't hold onto his right arm and fight at the same time and hope to survive, Naruto pushed himself off of the containers and asked, "Why aren't you dead? You have a giant power generator in your chest instead of a heart." "It is a heart," Helios replied. "It's just a better, tougher heart than yours. That little glowing ball you used would have turned your own heart into paste, right? Well, this is good old-fashioned machinery, so it can take a real pounding. You can't kill me like that." Naruto growled to himself, "Wonderful." Instead of developing skill, each of these individuals had a shortcut that helped them become better. Upgrading equipment was not the same as doing this. He could understand wearing the latest body armor, weapons, and other gear, but this was a whole other ballgame. When your limbs are mangled so bad you can't get them fixed and have to cut them off, that's kind of your cue to stop fucking fighting," Naruto said, drawing his other SOCOM, and opened fire straight at Helios. The physical boundaries of a person were placed there for a purpose. After firing 3 shots, he was struck by Helios, who lunged towards him and forcefully pushed him against the metal container he had just pushed himself off of. After taking all 3 shots, he made sure his arms were over his face. He didn't care if he got hurt as long as he wasn't shot in the head. Helios grabbed Naruto by the shoulder and enjoyed the cry of pain he let out as his fingers sank into the wound. "Sorry, does that hurt?" he questioned sarcastically, then slammed a punch into Naruto's stomach, sending him flying across the floor. "You're good. You actually hurt me," he said, stomping over Naruto as the younger man pulled himself to sitting up on his knees with his head down. "It's too bad we've got to end this. I could beat on someone like you all night. You're almost as indestructible as me." He raised both of his hands in a double sledgehammer attack, but as he brought them down to break Naruto's neck or crack his skull, a strong hand from Naruto found itself buried there. Slowly, Naruto's head lifted to meet Helios's eyes. They were blood red with slitted pupils, not the deep blue they usually were. With a deep growl, Naruto concealed his wound on his shoulder behind his face mask. The muscle and tissue appeared to mend themselves much more quickly than was humanly possible. The red cloak of energy encircled Naruto's body in the shape of a fox with two tails sticking out the back. Indestructible. Let's see how indestructible you are when I rip you apart limb from limb, Naruto exclaimed, his fist still in Helios's stomach. Naruto was viciously batted away from Helios by both tails, which caused him to fly across the warehouse and slam into another wall, severely denting it with his own body. Naruto was expressing his murderous intent, and Helios was wondering what the hell he was up against, but Naruto wasn't going to give him time to reflect. The supercharged Naruto leapt to the top of the crate stack and picked one up with ease. He then threw it across the building, striking Helios in the flush, and driving it like a stake into the metal-paneled wall. Naruto also used 3 additional crates as a kind of stake, hurling them across the warehouse and hammering the one that stuck out of the wall deeper into the metal wall until it fell outside. With the exception of the sound of Naruto's chakra cloak, everything was silent until Helios began to rip another hole in the wall and splatter blood all over himself while staring down Naruto and the red fox outline around him with a more sinister smile than ever. He was holding a blood-stained mini Uzi that had likely been confiscated from an unlucky Olympus mercenary outside. When Helios shot Naruto with the gun aimed at him, the character dodged the bullet like a red streak. His aim was not as good as his eyes, and he hurriedly used up the entire clip without ever hitting Naruto. With a growl of frustration, Helios flung the gun to the side, only to discover that Naruto's sharp claws had firmly grasped it when he extended his arm to release it. He met Naruto's gaze, and the young man started to slowly crush and squeeze his arm. Helios clenched his teeth at the realization that he was gradually losing control and struck Naruto in the head with his other hand, anticipating that he would release his hold. Naruto's hairline started to bleed after the punch, but that stopped quickly, and he glared at him. He then used his free hand to move the HF blade on his back and quickly drew it to cut Helios's arm off at the elbow. After taunting Naruto with the HF blade in his chest, Helios staggered back, staring at his stump of a powered artificial limb. "Gah, you bastard, I'll kill you. You think you're," he exclaimed, getting cut off by a stab that went through his chest but was just left of his generator, as it appeared to be deflected off of it. "You missed," Naruto instantly replied, giving him a hard punch to the face that sent him flying into the warehouse wall. With a bellowing roar, Naruto charged Helios, repaying the favor by driving into him and bringing down the warehouse's entire wall, but this time, he brought a little something extra with him. He struck Helios with a Rasengan that was encased in a red chakra shell that was in his good hand. The warehouse's wall was completely destroyed by the attack's force, leaving it open to the rainstorm outside. The entire warehouse collapsed as if an F5 hurricane had struck it, tearing apart the wall that had already been torn asunder by both men, the newly fallen wall, and the damaged ceiling of the already rusty, dilapidated building. XXX alongside Sniper Wolf. A mile down the riverside, she saw the light jet start to head down the makeshift runway to take off, but her focus was drawn to the complete collapse of the warehouse that she was positive Naruto had been in. As Wolf turned her rifle toward the aircraft, she thought to herself, no, it can't just end like this with no chance to get Ocelot at all. She had no intention of shooting through the jet's windshield. Even if she managed to pierce the extremely durable windshield and murder the pilot, Ocelot would still perish in the crash of the plane. She also had the option of aiming her formidable sniper rifle directly at the plane's front tire. The first bullet fired by Sniper Wolf tore the wheel cover off, and the second bullet struck the wheel itself, causing the light jet to lose speed and slow down before turning around and trying again. She gave Naruto a little smile, knowing that she had given him an extra few minutes to try and finish the mission. XXX in partnership with Naruto. With the ruins of the warehouse hurled aside, Naruto reached back inside, the Kyuubi chakra still blazing within him. He pulled Helios out by one arm with his good arm. The man had lost most of his right arm, which Naruto had personally severed, as well as most of his left leg and right leg, both of which had improved prosthetics. "You see?" Helios exclaimed, clearing his throat, "You can't kill me, kid. I'm indestructible." Naruto's HF blade was still lodged in his chest as he spoke. Naruto strode over to him, growling, and threw him onto the ruined remnants of the warehouse onto his back. "You can't finish me," taunted Helios. "What are you going to do now?" Without saying anything, Naruto simply reached for the HF blade's handle and gripped it firmly. Helios felt the blade heat up a moment later as it started to drag through his chest. He screamed in agony as Naruto started to literally carve the power generator core out of his chest with the powerful cutting weapon. After cutting it out, he removed the bloody perpetual generator from Helios's chest and held it up like a trophy while the man gasped deeply and lost the ability to even speak. After the man passed away, Naruto simply looked down at him and threw the generator into the river. With his opponent vanquished, Naruto sheathed the HF blade and let the Kyuubi's chakra wane. Although the injury to his shoulder had healed, it remained an inoperable limb for the time being. Naruto's eyes grew wide as he looked up and saw the light jet ready to take off down the riverbank. After stumbling out of the warehouse's wreckage, Naruto placed his good hand to his ear to adjust the codec frequency. He put his hand down to concentrate on running after the plane as it took off down the riverside when he heard a single, sharp ping in response to the frequency he had entered. "Come on! Where is the plane?" he exclaimed, unable to catch up to it no matter how quickly he ran. He pondered in his head. When he returned to normal, using that much of the Kyuubi's chakra really taxed him. "I believed Olga brought it to Leon," he said. "If she had anticipated that we would be working in this area, wouldn't she have placed it nearby?" A flying object appeared behind him, soaring above the buildings and settling down to fly next to Naruto, interrupting his thoughts. He grinned in relief as he leapt onto his platform board and accelerated in an effort to reach the jet before it took off. Since he had never ridden the board faster than 40 miles per hour, he was unsure of its maximum speed, but the time had come to find out. Holding his injured arm and bending forward to accelerate even more, Naruto exclaimed, "Come on!" Naruto tried to follow the plane as it took off and started to climb, but his board was unable to keep up with its speed, and he embarked on an unfortunate pursuit across Leon's skies. The jet easily withdrew, leaving Naruto trailing in the air only to slow down and watch it go. There was no way the board could outrun such a swift aircraft. He carried no weapon with which to try to shoot it down. Even with chakra, he couldn't perform a Hollywood prank and leap to seize the jet because he would never be able to get close to it. He was limited to shaking his head while hanging over the city and making circles on his board in the rain. Finally removing his face mask, he displayed a deep frown on his face. "Damn it," he muttered to himself. It was unlikely that such an opportunity to corner Ocelot would present itself again. At least there was one positive thing that came out of all of this. Ocelot never saw him. As his codec went off and the sound of helicopter blades filled his ears, it was something to think about. Naruto heard Johnny exclaim, "Boss," after answering his phone. "We've got the ride out of here." Meryl yelled over the sound of the helicopter, "Naruto, we've got to go. Come on," over the sound of the chopper as Naruto stayed hovering in the air on his board. With a final exhale, Naruto maneuvered his board into the helicopter and let it shut down while Meryl closed the door and Johnny had the opportunity to take them to a secure location. He growled as he took a seat, removing his headband and saying, "Well, that was a failure." Meryl sat across from him and Wolf sat next to him, both observing his injured appearance. "You look like hell," Meryl said, again. 2 times in less than 6 months. Wolf said as he felt his arm hurt, "It seems like you can't go very long at all without hurting yourself, little Proby. But the last time it was because of Metal Gear. What did it to you this time?" Naruto leaned back in his chair and replied, "A psycho with knockoff gray fox parts, but hey, at least I can say I got to see the President of the United States up close and personal." "You saw the President? What's James Johnson doing here in Leon with Ocelot?" Meryl inquired inquiringly, blinking in bewilderment. Johnny even averted his gaze from the front to hear what was being said. Naruto shook his head and said, "Not that president, I'm not talking about the new one." It made no difference to him who was president. God, he was awful with these nameless interchangeable suits at the top of the chain of command in America. Fuck that guy, I'm talking about the last one. Old what's-his-face was with Ocelot about to go underground, he said, disregarding all of that. Well, those were some leaders anyone could remember. It's not like any of the presidents were ever as cool as any of the cages in the elemental nations. But when Wolf brought up the previous president, he tightly gripped his wounded arm. She was brought back to reality by Naruto's painful yelp. "You're saying that the man Ocelot was with was the president?" she asked, getting a nod in response. "That man was President Sears?" she asked, realizing that he did resemble him. albeit without the beard from his time as president. If she wasn't meant to kill the figures at the top, she was just as bad with them as Naruto was. Otherwise, she wouldn't have known about them or cared about them. Meryl's head was hurting from all of this. This was all about Ocelot, wasn't it? Since he was the only person who could connect Naruto to the conspiracy that underpinned all of the Shadow Moses nonsense and more, didn't he just want to find him? Since it seemed that her uncle had taken her as a threat in order to justify her participation in the mission in the first place and protect her, she was curious to find out. How in the hell did the outgoing president handle Ocelot's retreat? After a mental setback, Meryl finally said, "Hold on 1 minute." Johnny grunted affirmatively from the front of the helicopter. "I think you should tell us everything from the start since some of us were busy doing stuff somewhere else." Meryl had a bewildered look on her face. Naruto, sounding somewhat desperate, said, "I'd rather get some sleep while I can. I'll just end up repeating everything I'd say to you guys when I debrief to Olga. And she might kick my ass for not getting Ocelot in the end." It dawned on him then that he had never even established Ocelot's true opposition to Sergei Gerlukovich. He couldn't even claim to have unearthed an Ocelot plot because nothing he said put him at all at odds with the man. Failing missions sucked, aside from learning that Ocelot had sold the Metal Gear Rex plans to the highest bidder on the black market as something they had considered before all of this even began. XXX with his head turned away from the window. Ocelot laughed. "You saw him, right? The little brat is dogged as all hell. And he wants them gone as well, even if he doesn't even know it's Solidus, from the private jet that was floating comfortably high above French airspace." Solidus Snake, also known as George Sears, was sitting in seat. "We don't need him, Ocelot. I know his type. If he somehow followed you all the way out here to France, then he's single-minded. That is not something I want out of someone to work with me. Naruto Uzumaki is a notorious bleeding heart and will turn against a cause he doesn't understand or believe in." "A man like that is pretty dangerous," Ocelot agreed, "and not for the good reasons either." "He's ignorant," scathingly responded Solidus. "He seems prepared to fight a war with ghosts simply because he knows they exist. He's chasing shadows, and those shadows aren't going to go for too much longer without striking back." "So do you want something done about him?" Ocelot asked Solidus, grunting in understanding. "He'll be a real bastard to track down and find if he doesn't want to be seen. He always was, even when he was in Foxhound. Trying anything might tip him off to you more than now. Naruto was the most basic, straightforward thing in the world to operate around. He was a damn teddy bear if you didn't give him any reason to hate you. Even if he didn't know the first thing about his target, he would follow you to the ends of the planet if you offended him. Similar to this moment. He was unaware that he was engaged in a dogfight with the Patriots. Most of the time, he still didn't. At some point, the man figured he couldn't blame the boy for not knowing more about such a threat, so he spoke up and said, "We'll leave him be. Every wildcard has its uses. Eventually the Patriots will try something with him and he won't be an issue any longer." That was the Patriots' main argument. It was intended that no one know. They used the president and the Pentagon as their figureheads and ruled the United States from the shadows. It was never intended for a grunt like Naruto to learn anything about them, much less get close to them. Perhaps he'll manage to weaken them a bit before they take him out or pull him under their yoke, one would think. But eventually, he would stumble and fall. A punk kid could never pull off a feat like taking the Patriots to their knees. When Naruto was taken prisoner, Solidus served as president. In order to avoid stepping on the Patriots' toes with his own policies and the like, he was fully aware of the activities that they were involved in during his presidency. Naruto had already been captured once for testing an investigation, but he had escaped by sheer luck. Once their claws were into him, they would be harder to shake off. This was no story of David and Goliath. You couldn't just decide to fight everyone. Naruto, that is, couldn't. Solidus knew exactly what he needed to do, so he could. He only required some time. XXX 2 weeks later, April 2005, South Africa's Limpopo province. Naruto, age 18. In order for Sniper Wolf, Johnny, and Meryl to re-enter the group of Gerlukovich mercenaries that Olga commanded, Naruto and the others had traveled to South Africa. Before leaving them close to Olga's base of operations on the Zimbabwean border, Naruto had given them an explanation of everything that had happened. All he needed to do now was tell her why the mission had failed and he was waiting for her in a small border town bar. There was nothing major going on in that region of the world at the time because the Gurlukovich mercenaries were hired to participate in training exercises with the South African military. Regarding the codec, he was very open and stated that he wanted her in front of witnesses in case she felt uncomfortable. He was currently considering how to inform her of what had happened and how to present it in a way that would make him appear good because she would be arriving shortly. Perhaps it would help if he told her about the vicious fight he'd had with that guy from Helios. It wasn't like he was still wearing the scars from that fight. Why couldn't the Kyuubi occasionally leave him with some scars as proof? The gift had a catch. His own introspective thoughts were interrupted when his codec exploded. The bar was relatively empty at the moment, and Naruto was by himself when he put his hand to his ear and said, "Hello." Naruto Uzumaki. A confident, well-read voice asked. It was another voice Naruto had never heard before. He could understand how this random guy had gotten his frequency back this time, but how had Natasha Romanenko gotten it back when he was in Los Angeles? And just who the hell is this? Naruto asked, his voice tone a little acerbic. I don't think I know who you are. You know who I am, boy. Everyone knows who I am. I'm very important. Naruto laughed without any humor. Why don't you just tell me anyway? People that are important to everyone else aren't really that important to me for no good reason. The voice said proudly, "This is James Johnson. Is your memory refreshed now? What a douche. You're speaking to the President of the United States. After only a month and a half on the job, this guy was either letting the job get to him or he had a lot of weight hanging over Naruto's head at the moment. Fortunately for him, it was the latter. Take a shot at the extremely important person and let him know you couldn't care less about his existence." Not really, Naruto replied dryly. You can't refresh something that you never learned in the first place. What do you want? Is such a wonderful way to start a friendship? For you to come back to the States, and I will eventually. Just not right now. I'm kind of busy. Ocelot is off limits to you. How was that known to him? It was meant to remain a secret. Ocelot was the only one who could have recognized him, so why was he rushing back to the president in light of what he had heard and seen in Lyon? The question, how the fuck did you know about that? What do you want? Was one that Naruto took offense to? It's not really what I want in this case, it's what my partners want, and they want you to work for us. It would be for the best if you just cooperated with us. You're still a reserve in the US Armed Forces. Your discharge never fully went through and we're asking you back. This guy obviously wanted him for one of two reasons, so Naruto growled, fuck. You. I don't work for people I don't respect and I don't fight for reasons that I don't care about. Either to get him to fight for him, which would be pointless, or to capture him again. He would have to, respectfully, decline if the latter was the case, saying something like, good luck finding me to make me work for you. You're going to need it. He had been ready for the possibility of sending people after Naruto since Shadow Moses had happened, should the need arise. He was aware of what to do and how to blend in. I don't need to find you, Naruto. We can find your sister just fine. Catherine Miller, correct? 16 years old, resident of Los Angeles, California, daughter of former Special Forces Drill Sergeant, Master, Kazuhira Miller, also known as McDonald Benedict Miller. I'm sure she could help us find you somehow. A part of him desired to lose control, and another part of him simply wanted to go back to Los Angeles. As quickly as he could have at that moment. That wouldn't have resolved anything. Was there any chance he could do some damage control? He intended to learn the truth. Naruto kept his voice down. In fact, he spoke with a very pleasant voice. Alright, I know you think you're all safe in that office of Ursa behind that desk with all of your well-trained guards and whoever you've got pulling strings watching your back, but you need to remember something. You might have friends bigger than you, but while I probably can't find them, you're a public figure. I can find you anywhere in the entire world. There's nowhere you can go. If you lay a finger on my little sister, if I even call her and hear her tell me that she feels scared like there's someone that might be watching her, I'll ruin your life. I'll ruin your family's life. Don't fuck with me, please. Do you know who you're talking to like that? I'm more afraid of the Pope than I am of you, unless you want me to lie to you and say that you could lay a finger on Catherine and get away with it. Glibly said Naruto, but you could always just ignore me and capture her anyway. I'll probably play ball for a little bit, until I find out what you did with her, and then I'll either just get her and leave the country altogether or kill your entire family in front of you, depending on what you did to her. President Johnson paused briefly after hearing that, asking, and you really believe that you can pull this off? You're threatening the most powerful man in the free world? It was a big risk, but Naruto's voice remained unwavering as he said, with the sound of your partners, you don't seem that free to me. And that question you just asked me. Do you think Ocelot could pull it off? Naruto asked, leaving Johnson in silence as he allowed that to sink in. There was a chance he could pull this off. He must have known who Ocelot was and what he was capable of if he was mentioning him by name. Additionally, he was aware of Naruto well enough to not waste any time. We won't lay a hand on Catherine Malera. That was what Naruto was hoping for, if physically. But Naruto, her father's retirement benefits, his pension, all of that could just disappear. And her mother's assets could just disappear. We can leave her with nothing, Uzumaki. And there's nothing you can do about that. And then there is the matter of certain events that transpired in the year 1974. A locked file known only to the top as the Peace Walker incident. What if some of that leaked to the public and the hero and victim of Shadow Moses, her father, was turned into something else? Naruto urged, you can't do those things. The money seemed a bit unrealistic, even though he was unaware of the Peace Walker situation. As he put it, you don't own the banks, you don't have control over Master Miller's assets that he left to Catherine, and you can't do anything with her mom's money either. My business partners can do anything they want. They can alter history. They can leave her penniless, Naruto. They can leave her as the destitute daughter of a traitor and a possible terrorist. And I don't ever have to have anyone lay a single hand on her. What will you do then? She'll be all alone with nothing, and killing anyone's family wouldn't fix that. Naruto was at a loss for words in response to that. Those items vanished once they were gone. It wouldn't work to go after Johnson directly to get those things back. He was at a loss for words because this was not like before. There was only going to be two ways out of this. Either accept it and move on, or uproot Catherine's entire life and make her disappear. There was only one course of action he would even consider taking, and he knew it, given the choice between ruining his beloved pseudo-sister's life before it started and stepping into line. Thus, they had him once more, and he still had no idea who in the world they were. We'll be expecting you soon in Los Angeles. There's a position that my associates believe you would be absolutely perfect for. I'm sure you'll make the right choice for your loved one. Johnson said, as if this were a checkmate. Come back home and do your duty, son. And with that, the conversation came to an end. All that pretense for nothing at all. He had just engaged the President of the United States in a pissing match, which he had badly lost. How in the hell could he have known? He put it down on the bar table and buried his face in his hands. In Lyon, what was Solidus's name for them? The Americans? Well, wasn't that fantastic? It was 10 minutes later when Olga entered the scene. She hadn't been all that upset that Naruto hadn't completed his mission. The most crucial aspect was that it could not be connected to her, and she was aware that Revolver Ocelot would be a difficult red for anyone. She was not going to kick his ass, despite what the general public believes. It was funny to hear Sniper Wolf tell her that Naruto was thinking of all the ways she would try to beat him up once she found out he had failed. But she wasn't some rigid bitch who tried to instill fear in the hearts of others. No, her only purpose for being there was to provide Naruto with information and maybe even to tell him about and compensate him for a job she was able to avoid being caught doing. Nothing major, though he may have leapt at the chance to get paid real money. Naruto was still a valued employee even after the job in Lyon went badly, which was somewhat understandable based on what the others had told her. However, she was never allowed to tell her father that she was working with him. As she walked inside, she had to look for him instead of expecting the mischievously overblown, pleasantly chipper greeting she had been expecting. Uzumaki. What's the matter? Olga asked, cautiously looking around before taking a seat across from him. When she finally found him, he had a focused expression on his face and a disenchanted body posture. With the intensity in them, Naruto's eyes panned up and locked with hers, almost transporting her back to their vicious battle from years ago. He looked down at her as if they were the only people in the bar, sitting up straight in his chair and saying, Olga, you and I need to talk. I'm going to have to go back to America for a while. With a hint of curiosity in her voice, Olga asked, already? You just left barely a month ago and you're going back. How long are you going to be this time? He never disclosed to anyone what he had been up to the previous time, so everyone assumed he had completed any unfinished business and left it at that. The doubtful expression on Olga's face caused Naruto to sigh deeply. Honestly? He asked, needing her to comprehend that he had to go. I don't even know how long I'll be gone. It was going to be a lengthy discussion, Aniki. Now, it would normally be a good thing to be walking outside Los Angeles International Airport after smuggling a sword through customs, getting away with it, and discovering that you've been embraced by a gorgeous girl you would consider to be very close. Not if making sure said girl had a future was the primary reason you returned to Los Angeles in the first place. The whole flight from Johannesburg to Los Angeles was occupied with Naruto's thoughts regarding all of the offensive material that had been thrown at him during the previous half-year. His initial 2003 capture resulted from a division of the US military that the highest authorities were aware of. The very top were essentially puppet figures that these patriots, of whom Naruto could not identify, guided and controlled, aside from Liquid Snake, Ocelot, and George Sears, also known as Solidus Snake. The first man was dead, and he had little hope of ever finding the other two, especially at this point. Ocelot appeared to be attempting to assist, Solidus appeared to want to defeat the Patriots, and Naruto was likely to support him? He was unaware. To be sure, Ocelot was too busy doing too many things at once for Naruto. Fortunately, he had Olga as a friend to keep him updated if necessary. Olga was a friend who wanted to beat him up, but he had also called worse people his friends. The Patriots, or whoever, didn't seem to know anything about his collaboration with her or his assistance to Sniper Wolf, Johnny, and Meryl. That was excellent. It seems that the Patriots also had some dirt on Master Miller. That was another matter entirely. He had no idea what a Peace Walker incident was. These Patriots now possessed the power to destroy everyone's life on the planet, among other things. He would gladly allow that to occur to his dear ones. He would ensure their safety. All he needed to know was what he was protecting them against in the first place. He required additional details. How this little situation could work out for him was hidden there. Sure, he would play ball. But all along, he would be learning everything he could from the inside out. He would take care of everything when the time came. Nobody threatened his younger sister or exerted control over him. Whoever it was that was tugging at his cheek to get his attention at the moment. Naruto asked her, having only just realized that they were in a car with her behind the wheel, "What's the matter, kitty? You were doing that weird spacing out thing you do when you think too hard again." Catherine told him, smirking, "I swear I could hear your brain cooking in your head like bacon." She let go of his cheek and continued to look ahead of her on the road. They stopped at a light, and Naruto said, "Ha ha." Then he saw that she was staring at him closely and asked, "What's up?" "Thank you." Naruto was taken aback and asked himself, "For what? What did I do?" Yes, he was doing something that was acknowledged as a thank you at the moment, but she wasn't aware of it, and, if he carried out his duties properly, she never would have been. "I received a book not too long after you left again, Aniki. It told me what happened to you. It's supposed to be really famous by now, In the Darkness of Shadow Moses. It's running up the bestseller chart." So Natasha sent her the book as he had requested after all, and Catherine shook her head, giving him a look that said, "You're so silly for not remembering what you did." They started moving again, and Naruto grinned and said, "You're welcome." What the hell? He thought to himself, his face pressed against the window, not looking her way. "You think you're helping by keeping things from me, but you're really not. I'm not a little girl and we aren't like regular kids. You might be way weirder than me, but that doesn't mean anything. You could have said something about the freaky guys in the background that run all of these conspiracies," Catherine said, holding Naruto to the window while driving at the same time. Naruto abruptly removed her hand from his face and glared at her. She was beginning to feel a little scared by the way he seemed to be staring into a hole in her. Calmly, Naruto said, "Pull over. Too coolly, now." She followed his instructions and found the closest right turn to park the car in a lot because this was not the moment to be combative. "What?" she finally asked. "Why are you staring at me like that?" After turning off the car and turning to face him, she tried to match his serious stare with her own, but it was like putting a water balloon up against a hand grenade. "You want to know about whoever these people are? That's a book, kitty. It doesn't tell you the first thing about any of what's actually happening," Naruto said, pausing for a few more seconds to make his point clearly with his eyes. He sounded like a spoiled child to her, judging from the tone of his voice. Taking her keys out of the ignition, she dropped them to the ground and said, "Well, we're not going anywhere until you make me understand it." "Fine." Naruto replied modestly, knowing precisely where to begin. You know how you came to see me in the hospital after I was wounded in Iraq a few years ago? Catherine replied, yeah, I was wounded in Iraq 4 months before then. After that I was taken to some place where this creepy old woman did experiments on me until I broke out. It took a few years, but I'm stringing together some of what she did in nightmares. Do you want to hear one of them? He asked with a calm tone. One of the things I remember is that she tested exactly how tough my body was by shooting me with different sized rounds at different ranges, and testing the splash damage of frag grenades on me from different ranges. Catherine touched him and her eyes grew wide. Are you serious? How'd they get away with it? She asked. Lying back in his chair and looking straight ahead, Naruto answered, what am I going to say? Who am I going to tell it to? He felt like kicking the dashboard, but he knew that would probably break it. I have to do what they say now or they'll ruin your life. As though it was impossible that she would be touched by any of this, Catherine exclaimed. Me? What is this? A movie? You've got to be kidding, why me? The President of the United States is just a figurehead. I found out as much from the last one, George Sears, Naruto admitted, turning a blue eye in her direction as his gaze softened significantly. Because you're the only way that they can get to me in a way that I actually care about, he said, though he could have sworn he had made that clear to her beforehand. The reason he resigned was out of disgrace for letting all of the information in that book slip. It really doesn't make him and his administration look good at all, Catherine said, glancing at her own copy of In the Darkness of Shadow Moses in the backseat of her car. Was the Secretary of Defense really going to nuke the base you were in? She asked. Yeah, but that's not important right now, Naruto replied, attempting to get her back on track. But Sears probably resigned so that he could run away. That shadowy group I keep telling you about probably marked him for death. And now I'm here to do what they tell me or they'll tear you and your mom's lives apart. Catherine was at a loss for words as she looked down at the floor of her car and exclaimed, Damn, I really am a hindrance to you, don't I? Naruto grinned and said, You're too cute to be a hindrance. However, his attempt to defuse the situation failed, something he realized when his mood returned to normal. I'm going to find a way out of this, you know. I'm going to come up with something, and get them to leave you alone, alright? I promise. In the meantime, you can't tell people this stuff. The Patriots don't approach you directly because they don't think you know that much, so that means that you need to get rid of. Pointing to the book in the backseat. Naruto narrowed his eyes at Catherine because she sounded so interested in this. I'll be good, I won't let anyone know about this stuff. Who would I tell? My dumbass high school classmates. What good would that do anyone? Catherine said, realizing that some of the language and concepts in the book probably wouldn't pass muster with an actual editor, particularly if this whole conspiracy thing actually happened. Naruto gestured to her, saying, Not even your mom. Mom and I don't exactly talk that much anyway, Aniki. If you didn't tell me about this stuff when it kind of involves me, why would I tell her? Catherine said, making a zipper motion at her mouth before giving her a stern expression. With a sigh of relief, Naruto ran a hand through his hair and said, Oh man, I didn't know how good that would feel to get off of my chest. I feel way better. Ignoring Catherine's amusement, he turned serious once more and said, You need to get some kind of way to reach me anytime on my codec. No one can observe anything on my channel because it's never been registered anywhere. That way you can talk to me if anything ever goes wrong. Catherine gave him a mock salute and said, Please don't do that. All right, she said, putting down her keys to ask why she was back in Los Angeles. I know it wasn't just to see me, she added. As Catherine put the car in reverse and got ready to leave her parking spot, Naruto said, It actually was. I was told to come here, but I wasn't given any other directions. I think they just wanted to show me that they would leave you alone if I followed their directions. Naruto looked at her. At least for now, she said. Naruto always seemed to be in a worse mood than when she had last seen him, 5 years ago, when he had left her dad's house in Alaska to make his own way in the world. He was not the same wide-eyed child. She couldn't recall the last time he had simply laughed around, but she assumed it was just a part of growing up. He attempted to force happiness and was constantly very serious. It'll be okay, Catherine said to Naruto, attempting to appear assured. Really, all I have to do is keep my head down, right? I graduate next year, so maybe that will make things easier. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but just don't let anyone use you, alright? Not for me. With his side of his face resting on the cool window glass, Naruto gave her a quick glance but remained silent, saying, I could just run. Kitty, you could come along with me. However, what kind of life would you lead as a result? It would be awful and brief. I'll find a way to handle this and set us both free. I swear. However, Catherine had a similar thought. Nobody is going to turn you into a Nikki, their hired killer. The silence between them was hurting her. You're not some weapon, and you're not going to turn into one because some dicks too scared to face the world themselves want you to. I'll find some way to help you, I swear I will, she said, feeling angry that they had already hurt him once and that she would be the reason it happened again. XXX. Even after learning that Catherine's mother was home, Naruto was still apprehensive to enter her house, but in this instance he was forced to. Until he received word of his new orders, all he could do was wait. God, how he detested having to obey that jerk in a suit, Johnson. He could have killed him during the State of the Union address on national television before anyone at home knew what had happened, and here he was being treated like a complete moron. He had to ask again. Where was the loyalty? It really didn't get much easier to save the world, did it? Was this the last one? Was this the reason behind all those gunshots, detonations, and ass-kickings? Was this the reason he had made all those threats against the nation? Not even a goddamn Purple Heart came his way. Now all he could do was kick back and wait. Perhaps Catherine's mother was the kind to make sarcastic remarks and tolerate his presence instead of attempting to force him out? When Catherine opened her front door and peered inside her home, she was startled to see an unfamiliar man sitting on her couch and grinning at her. She reached back with her hand that was hidden inside before barely entering, tapping frantically to alert Naruto to the presence of someone inside. Naruto snarled outside the house, giving her a comforting rub, then leapt to the second story and attempted to enter through a window. Catherine entered the house slowly, thinking that Naruto would take care of everything. Hello, she said cheerfully to mask her feelings at the time. I don't want to be rude, but could I ask you who you are and what you're doing in my house? I'd like to know that too. A well-built African-American man wearing a high-ranking military suit sat in the couch staring directly at Catherine. He was oddly unafraid or even unaffected when he heard Naruto's voice suddenly appear behind him with said young man's strong grip resting on his shoulder. The man on the couch said, laughing a little, amazing. Although the man appeared genuinely impressed, they did not make fun of his small display. He said, I should have known you were somewhere since my orders said that my new recruit would be landing today and coming to this address, but when the girl came in and I didn't catch hide nor hair of you, even when you were right behind me. You're going to fit in just fine, Naruto Uzumaki. Upon hearing the man speak, Catherine's mother emerged from the kitchen. Not terribly shocked to see Naruto in her home, she greeted the young blonde, you must be Naruto. Having never met him in person, she added, I've heard a lot about you for years. What I've heard varies though. Naruto whirled to face Catherine's mother, blinked in bewilderment, sputtering, nice to meet you ma'am. I won't bother you for very long before I leave again. He then held out a hand. Colonel Jackson here said that he was simply here to retrieve you for your next assignment. This was the only working address that anyone could use to find you after Catherine's father. Well, you know, Catherine's mother said, appearing unfazed by his presence. Oh, don't worry about that, I know. As the lady just said, I am Colonel Jackson. Now that your leave of absence is up, you've been reassigned to me and my group. It should be quite interesting for the last remnant of Foxhound to be a member of my unit, the Navy man said, getting up to shake Naruto's hand. A leave of absence? Bullshit, thought Catherine and Naruto at the same time. Because of Naruto's most recent visit, Catherine was fully aware that he had not requested a leave of absence, or rather, he had simply said, fuck it, and gone. He had no intention of re-entering the military, at least not in an official capacity. This indicated that he had some longer-term plans that involved moving up the food chain. Jackson stated, it's time to get moving so we can get you briefed Uzumaki, which served as Naruto's signal to depart. It seems that there is no rest for the wicked, as they wanted him prepared to go right away with his assigned task. Sorry about the trouble, Naruto said, turning to face Catherine's mother after giving her a nod. It was no trouble at all. Where else were you supposed to go for them to contact you? She said, dismissing the situation with a wave. All right, remarked Naruto, before he and Colonel Jackson started to move toward the door. After exiting the vehicle and retrieving his belongings from Catherine's vehicle, he turned around to see Catherine approaching him in order to embrace him. Then he allowed her to do so, giving it back to her with great force while whispering, just barely audible to her, "Remember this frequency for when you get some way to contact me over a distance, alright? 141.92. Make sure you remember that and I'll talk to you soon." Catherine warned him to use caution before planting a kiss on his cheek. Naruto started to follow Jackson down the street after they both split up. She sighed, "God, I hate being so useless," as they vanished from her line of sight. XXX. After walking for well over a mile, Naruto and Jackson arrived at a nearby park. It should come as no surprise that their transportation was situated here. Since there was a military-grade helicopter available for transportation to anywhere, the entire park was off limits until they returned. With the other soldiers present to protect the vehicle, they climbed aboard without exchanging a word. Nothing was said as it took off and completely left the area until Jackson finally spoke up and said, "So you were put with me in my unit like I said. Whether you know it or not, these orders came right from the top." Naruto half sarcastically asked, "By top you mean the president, right?" He didn't anticipate that Jackson would grin and say, "No way. Does this guy also know about them?" The others in the helicopter were obviously unaware of the existence of a higher authority in the chain of command, so Jackson cryptically stated, "If that's as high as you can think of, then sure. Let's go with that." Jackson then laughed and shook his head. "Either way, you're with me now. I've been told that you are an exceptionally talented counterterrorism operative. That's good. Like I said, you're going to fit in just fine." For some reason, this made Naruto think a lot of his recruitment into Foxhound, except that at that point, nobody was attempting to kill him for a test. He did, however, carry a few small weapons in case. "So this unit. I really don't think you're going to have me stomping around in the desert in Iraq again, are you?" Naruto said, tensing his hands in his lap. Jackson simply gave him a deadpan expression. "Don't be stupid, kid. Do you really think they would have yanked you from God knows where and threw you in with me if that was all they wanted out of you? No, you're better than that. You're better, and now the majority of the world knows it after that book about Shadow Moses came out. I also know that you'd rather drive splints into your own fingernails than do this, so for what it's worth, you know what's keeping you here. Welcome to Dead Cell." XXX. After several hours, 300 miles off the coast of the Pacific, they finally saw an aircraft carrier that seemed to be their destination after gazing at nothing but ocean for who knew how long. As soon as Naruto got off the helicopter, he started walking in Jackson's footsteps. Who else in this Dead Cell knew anything about the Patriots, if not this man? The ship's enlisted men were busy, but he didn't care. If he didn't bother them, they wouldn't bother him either. He was back, for better or worse, and this time he had to figure out a different route out, for good. He would simply bide his time. He would eventually find out, and if that were the case, he would leave without a second thought. Don't worry about not knowing how to move around, you'll get how to move around soon. Now, Dead Cell is a small, special anti-terrorist unit established during the last presidency. We're technically an arm of the Navy SEALs, meant to carry out surprise attacks on ally bases so that we can keep our allies and our own forces prepared for terrorist attacks, Jackson said to Naruto as they started to navigate the carrier's interior. What the heck? When Naruto heard that, he thought to himself, so we're pretty much going to be acting like terrorists and doing terrorist stuff, so that the rest of the armed forces are prepared for terrorists and terrorist stuff, was the basic summary of what he had just been told, which he pieced together quickly. It sounded like a good idea, but he was having trouble picturing how exactly that was going to work. Remember this though, even though we're supposed to be an arm of the SEALs, we only take our orders from the president himself. Jackson grinned as he said, "That's pretty much it." His tone then became somewhat acerbic, even though this new president doesn't know his own head from his ass, much less how we were meant to be used. Nodding as if he were paying close attention, Naruto thought to himself, "I think I sense a little rift in the solid united front here. He might find use for this in the future." He was unable to rule out anything that would be helpful to him at this time. In his 18 years of life, he had to force his brain to work harder than it had ever done before. So we only move and go on missions that we're specifically told to do. Sounds like Foxhound, he muttered as he concluded. Jackson said, "Then you'll be used to the routine." I'm damn right, and if that's the case, I have plenty of time to plan my next move. Naruto would still have plenty of time to train, think things through, and gather his thoughts even if he worked regularly in Foxhound rather than going on missions. All he had was time. And now, Instead of simply following the herd as he had done before the events on Shadow Moses Island, he had a legitimate reason to take charge. It was time to completely break the flow. "Are you ready to meet the rest of the team?" Jackson asked him as they entered a lounge-like area of the ship that appeared to be empty save for a small group of people. He pointed to an elderly man who had numerous wrinkles on his face. His hair was slicked back and he had gray hair that was receding from his scalp. His trench coat was brown and had an Iron Cross of Germany emblazoned on the back. He did not even acknowledge Jackson's presence in the room as he played 3 different games of solitaire, saying, "This is Old Boy." "Old Boy?" was Naruto's disbelieving response. Was that someone in this group's codename? He was genuinely hoping, for once, that he wouldn't receive a codename, as he had often wished he had while in Foxhound. So, who is he? He thought to himself. Jackson began with a sort of explanation. Old Boy is the single oldest soldier walking the face of the planet. He was born in the early 1900s, no one knows exactly when. We do know that he was recorded fighting in World War II. Apparently they called him that back then as he was old even in the 1940s by the point of view of a soldier. He was legendary to the Wehrmacht. That news made Naruto shudder. "So he was a Nazi?" he asked. When Old Boy heard Naruto, he sneered in a thick German accent, "Don't lump me in with those ignorant bigots, brat." After the war he bounced around, training multiple fighting forces around the world until he found his way to us. He specializes in the use of older models of weaponry, basically the German armament from World War II. The technological advances never seemed to matter to him in battle, and they never detracted from his effectiveness, Jackson said, shaking his head at how well Naruto was getting along after just 30 seconds in the room. Naruto said, "That's actually kind of cool, in an honest manner. It turns out that some people were more interested in skill than in simply staying up to date with the latest releases of everything. This man embodied everything that was traditional." "Another thing," Jackson replied as though he had forgotten something. Due to Old Boy's advanced Aegea, he has his own special unit of soldiers called the Fallschirmjäger Unknown Currency Gear. They don't take orders from anyone other than him, and most of them are pretty hot-tempered. You'll know them when you see them around. He drills them hard, and they all wear heavy body armor with an Iron Cross on their gear. Old man with antiquated weapons who possesses personal bodyguards to compensate for his advanced age. Good to know, Naruto thought, nodding to the elderly German soldier. "I'll never make a crack about Ocelot getting old again." After introducing Old Boy, Jackson gestured to the corner of the room where an Asian man sitting on the floor, meditating, had no shirt on and his trench coat around his waist by the sleeves. He had a Fu Manchu mustache and long black hair pulled back into a single braid. There was just one tattoo of a dragon on his face, and it extended down his neck and torso. He gave Naruto a quick glance with one open eye before sneering and closing them. "Jap," he called out to him, then pretended he wasn't even real. "What was that?" Naruto snapped back. Jackson put a hand on his shoulder and dragged him out of earshot. "What the fuck is his problem?" Naruto asked, ready to strike that asshole in the face whether he was meditating or not. Colonel Jackson let out a long breath and said, "That's Chinaman." Naruto had a rough beginning with each of his new squad members twice, and it wasn't even his fault. The newcomer had a rough start. He's actually Vietnamese, but he was kidnapped and sold to an American family in New York from a black market adoption agency. He hated his family and the people around him that discriminated against him. It was just after the Vietnam War ended in America when they brought him over at age 5, and he eventually ran away to New York's Chinatown to live until he grew up and joined the Navy SEALs. He claims he's Chinese at heart and hates Americans in New York especially, and he inherited a strong dislike for Japanese. "We all read your background and he saw where you were supposed to be from." After giving himself some time to collect himself and move away from Chinaman, Naruto nodded and said, "So what can he do?" That inquiry made Jackson laugh. "He's our close quarters battle specialist and resident mystic and effects specialist. He's actually got a few skills that you'd be interested in." Seeing the curious expression on Naruto's face, he continued, "His time in the SEALs marked him as a specialist swimmer, but his real skills are the things he picked up in the back alleys of Chinatown. In addition to mastery of all sorts of kung fu, both northern and southern styles, and styles that require external and internal mastery, he also specializes in Qi Kung." With a cold, amused expression, Naruto said to Jackson, "You said that like I'm supposed to know what it is." It's a special sort of art that uses chi, or kai. According to your own rundown of your abilities, you call it the use of chakra. Either way, it's supposed to be one's internal spiritual energy. That caught Naruto's eye. Was there a person who possessed true, factual special abilities? How could he respond? Yeah, he can walk on water, stand on ceilings. Also things that you've been recorded doing. He can also survive underwater far longer than any human can. Those are just a few things he can do, Jackson said, noticing that the blonde was clearly intrigued. And now there's a bright spot on my cloud, Naruto thought to himself. He was left to learn how to use his two existing ninjutsu, Rasengan and Kage Bunshin, in the best way he knew Hoa in combination and in unique formations of, because no one in this world could teach him any new ninjutsu, and no one had taught him how to make them himself aside from simply inventing what he already had. If there was any possibility that this man could teach him how to improve his own methods, he would accept all of the offensive and ignorant racial epithets that Chinamen could throw at him. Eventually, he would gain enough knowledge to no longer require Chinamen, and he could even give him a payback in the future. For all the good he was sure that wouldn't do, up until then, he would just keep saying that he wasn't Japanese. Jackson then led Naruto to a big, bald man who was covered in a trench coat and had a bomb blast suit on. Were those roller skates on his feet? As if that wasn't bizarre enough, the man was in the middle of doing a manicure on himself. His hands were as smooth as a woman's, so it was unusual that Naruto needed to comment on it. This is Fat Man. After hearing that, and based on the previous two names he had heard, Naruto was not anticipating being given his own code name. He's the explosives expert of Dead Cell. A genius of bombs and the premier bomb maker in the world. He built an atomic bomb when he was 10 years old, the man said, turning to face Naruto and grinning maniacally before turning back to his hands. Naruto looked back at Fat Man and said, "What the hell? Who did things like that?" "You expected anything less from me?" Fat Man asked, assuming that Naruto knew who he was before meeting him, which is impossible in this case. "I'm the Emperor of Explosives. Something like that would be like a children's project for me now," was all that was needed to make Fat Man laugh deeply. Jackson, who had moved during Fat Man's brief monologue, said, "And that just leaves one person for you to meet on the team." Jackson was now standing a respectable distance away from Naruto. Rather than thinking about why he had turned away, Naruto ducked a kunai from his sleeve into his hand with enough speed to avoid being cut off by a throwing knife that was thrown toward him from a blind spot. Naruto was ready when he saw a man trying to stab him as he dropped from the darkened top of the room, not bothering or caring why this was happening. With his knife, Naruto deflected the oncoming blade clash. The man who attacked him was tall, fair-haired, and had a goatee. He had an open trench coat fastened with a belt. In addition to the knife he was using to attack Naruto, he also had another large knife in his other hand. He was dressed in brown pants and black full gloves. Naruto was forced to lean backward to dodge the man's second knife swipe, but he responded with a surprise attack of his own, spitting out a small throwing knife he had been holding between his teeth and inside his cheek. The real attack was not the man's head movement in an attempt to deflect the projectile. He failed to evade a hard, straight front kick to the face that sent him flying over a table and across the room. Vamp, stop. Just as the man who had picked himself up and Naruto had bowed his legs to get ready to charge in for the kill with a leap and a follow-up Rasengan, Jackson said this. "I'm too old to be dealing with this hazing crap. If anyone tries that again, I'm cutting something off, ripping something off, or throwing someone overboard." "Patriots be damned," the young man said, turning to leave the room as he mumbled the last sentence under his breath. He tried to calm Naruto down by placing a hand on his shoulder, but it kind of had the opposite effect. After Naruto left, the man who had attacked him remained crouching on the table, wiping at some blood that had run down his neck from the knife that Naruto had spit at him. Though he appeared to be completely unharmed from what should have been a fatal injury or at the very least one that caused panic, Vamp stared at the tiny blade covered in his own blood. "I believe he'll be a fantastic fit, Colonel," Vamp said calmly in his Romanian accent before he sat down on the table he had been standing on. "You didn't go far. That's good," Jackson said to Naruto as he walked outside the room, indicating that he was giving him the silent treatment. "Come with me. I'll take you to your quarters." He gestured for Naruto to follow him. "I really didn't feel him there at all," Jackson thought to himself. "I have quarters?" questioned Naruto in an unsure manner, It was not until shortly before they attempted his murder at Shadow Moses that he was given his own room in Foxhound. As he gestured for the young man to follow him, Jackson gave a stiff nod and said, "This entire part of the carrier is ours. You've got the last bit of personal space we've been provided though." It was evident right away that Naruto wasn't happy with his current situation and was only here because he had to be. "I'm your commanding officer, but I'm not a tyrant and I'm not out to get you. Either way, you're a member of my unit now, Uzumaki, and I expect you'll know what to do and how to work," Jackson said, which made sense given the circumstances that Jackson was aware of. Naruto followed Jackson through the carrier, shoving his hands in his pockets and saying, "Oh, I know how to work." He used to think he was weird, but after coming here, he felt much more normal. "So just let me know what I'm working with here. What do I need to know other than that my team is full of psychopaths and jerks?" Naruto asked. Telling him about the perks might cheer the child up. "You have free reign of the armory. If there's something you want or need, then you can procure it for yourself. If there's something you want that we don't have, then we can try to get it. No one's going to tie your hands in the field here. We need you in one piece." It was strange because Jackson thought that, despite not having approached the unit or received an invitation to join from the leader himself, he could come to like Naruto. However, given how he ended up with Dead Cell, he would always have to keep an eye on him. That made perfect sense. This would have happened by now if these guys were intended to kill him. There had been plenty of opportunities to take out the strange Dead Cell member covertly over the previous few hours, including the armed escorts during the helicopter ride over the empty ocean, the room full of them, and the fight he had with one of them that Naruto claimed he had killed or severely injured with his counterattack. He was therefore clearly supposed to sit down, smile, shut up, and obey him for the time being. Jackson also didn't appear to be in with the Patriots, even though he was aware of them and the reason he was there. At most, he was an agent. However, Naruto felt that he was just receiving orders from higher up the ladder and that he needed to swallow them like a good soldier because there were no threats. Jackson pointed to the open door of a room and declared, "This is all yours." It was tiny, not that Naruto was complaining or even expecting the room to be larger. Large rooms were reserved for common barracks, and he certainly didn't need a lot of space because he didn't need it for anything but sleeping. A desk that was just 3 feet away from the twin-sized bed against the wall was situated in a corner. There was a footlocker at the foot of the bed, and Naruto figured he would have to booby-trap it or bring his own lock. Most likely both. Naruto looked up at Jackson after dropping his bags in the small area allotted and saying, "I'm only doing this for my little sister. You met her. If it wasn't for her, then I would have just run away." Jackson nodded as he directed Naruto out of the living area. "Well, either way, you're my responsibility now. We work for the president, which means they'll know how to reach you too. When they want you to do something, you'll know it because you'll be going alone. Other than that, I'm in charge, so feel free to bring any concern to me, and try not to kill any of the others. You're Dead Cell now, kid." Jackson gave himself permission to recline on his bed and unwind for a little while as he left Naruto by himself. He promised not to give himself another chance until he was satisfied. Since he had already outperformed everything he had been conditioned to face, he hadn't really had the time or motivation to properly train other than to maintain what he could already do. Now he needed to get better for a good cause, to set himself free. And that would most likely require some time. A month later, in June 2005, on board the USS Wilderness, Naruto is 18 years old. As of yet, Dead Cell had not been assigned to any missions in its entirety. Members would either be sent in solo or in teams of 2, just like with Foxhound. Colonel Jackson freely acknowledged that, unlike the other members, he lacked any unique skills or strange abilities and that, as the unit's leader, he was not frequently sent on missions. Nonetheless, the asylum needed to be managed by someone, and an inmate could not be in charge of Dead Cell's only residents. Naruto wouldn't put any of them in a position of real authority. Fat Man was a mobile douchebag who never really had anything positive or constructive to say while on the roller skates. He was a narcissistic, crazy man who was obsessed with anything that had to do with time, his hands, or explosives. After learning about explosive tags from Naruto, he did become more receptive to him. The idea amused the man considerably, to put it mildly, as he believed it to be a fantastic joke or a made-up fairy tale. Naruto was unable to verify the authenticity of the tags because he could not duplicate them. Given that Naruto was supposed to be a Japanese immigrant who was raised in America, Chinaman's hatred of Japanese people was only intensified by the fact that Naruto appeared to be American. To him, Naruto seemed to be a perplexing contradiction, and anything perplexing tended to be frightening and irrational. But with persistent questioning, Naruto was able to get him to tell him things. Sooner or later, his short fuse caused him to yell angrily at Naruto, and he would usually give him whatever information he wanted in an attempt to just get the hell away. The only potential leaders would be Vamp and Old Boy, but even then, that would be stretching it given the elderly German soldier's apparent loose ends. Because he had his own unit to protect him, he was always dispatched alone and was not a nice guy. Even so, the blonde was perfectly content for him to leave Naruto alone if Naruto did the same for him. However, Vamp was just strange. Very strange. He seemed to be unconcerned about anything in particular, and he frequently cracked jokes about dying. It was actually kind of impressive how strange his movements were in the middle of combat. He moved like a dancer who used knives of all sizes. He could run on water and stand on walls, just like Chinaman. When it came to throwing knives, his aim was on par with Naruto's, and he appeared to only use blades during battle. However, Naruto could find comfort in the knowledge that he was capable of surpassing Vamp in everything. Naruto kicked himself into high gear to outpace Vamp, who was faster than any normal person could ever hope to be. All-out sprints across the deck, usually while towing or carrying something ridiculously heavy. He reasoned that now was the right time to abuse his body and break it in order to make it better. Emulating his old friend Rock Lee by working himself into the ground from sunrise until well after dusk. Vamp was more powerful than the average person. With constant abuse of the weights on the carrier, Naruto's strength without the Kyuubi was starting to surpass that of a powerlifter. Despite never having visited a gym with free weights, he was surprised at how much simpler it was to gain strength in this world. Recovering from wounds was the one thing Vamp was unquestionably better than Naruto at. The fact that he could still stood even though Naruto was unaware of it and Vamp was unwilling to discuss it, only smirking and giggling to himself whenever it was brought up. After a while, Naruto was informed that Vamp had been kicked over the table and was out of sight, but that despite this, he didn't bleed out or even register the wound, indicating that Naruto was not even present when it happened. He needed to improve himself before he could even try to learn more about the Patriots. Which was why he was sitting in a contemplative pose on his bed right now. He was shown by Vulcan Raven how to do it, coerced into it, and made to understand that, once he entered a trance, he was truly capable of doing something. Chinaman helped him see that it was really beneficial. All he needed to do was accept something beforehand. Something that was the primary reason he never once again intended to meditate. However, restricting any aspect of himself was undoubtedly not the path to self-emancipation and going back to his routinely planned life. The only times he saw the sewers inside his own head were when he was in extreme financial hardship, and that was the one time in January when he tried to fully meditate with Vulcan Raven. With a growing sense of malevolence in his heart, he moved through the ankle-high water, knowing exactly where to go. He eventually found himself facing the bars that contained his inner demon in an open room and said, "So Kyuubi, I guess it's time to talk." Stillness. No teasing. No condescending tone of voice or snarky greeting. Nothing but quiet. After standing there looking into the darkness for what seemed like an hour, the Kyuubi finally asked in a condescending way, "Are you done trying to be a hero? I told you things weren't what they seemed. And here you find yourself in a rather spectacular mess after 5 years of doing nothing useful. Now you finally want me to flex my tails the languidly opening its eyes to show off its sharp white teeth. Or, as Naruto might have put it, things weren't like that. He might have attempted that ridiculous strategy, but judging by the expression on the Kyuubi's face, it was obvious that it understood the circumstances. It was obvious that the wrong people had been aware of his abilities for the previous 2 years, so his sole defense trying to remain anonymous on the lower end of the totem pole would not stand up. He had previously unconsciously used a significant amount of power from the Kyuubi in his fight with Helios. After thinking for a moment about how to approach the conversation, Naruto said, "I just came to say you were right. 2 years ago you were right. It wasn't over then, it isn't over now, it's not going to be over anytime soon. But it's not as easy as you think it is. I don't want you to flex anything, Fox." "Of course it is." The Kyuubi continued, "Simply head to where your enemies are and allow me my freedom. I'll take care of the rest, I guarantee it." Not at all like a cage, that's for sure. Naruto rolled his eyes sarcastically and said, "That's a great idea. Except I don't know where my enemies are. The real ones that I want aren't anywhere I can locate right now, and the president is a nobody in all of this. A replaceable loser. If I was even insane enough to try that, then all I would do was destroy millions of people for absolutely nothing. Power isn't going to win this fight. But it sure wouldn't hurt," he said, displaying no loyalty to those in authority and willing to leave them to burn at the first chance. "Believe it or not, I couldn't possibly give you any more chakra than when you were trapped in that laboratory." "What?" Naruto asked, looking shocked. "But you're the Kyuubi no Yoko. You can create tsunamis and level mountains. All of that nonsense." The Kyuubi posed a rhetorical question, "And if I could do all of that while I'm in here, then how do you think some flimsy, rusty bars in your weak little mind can hold me back?" The beast growled angrily at Naruto. "Your damn Hokage's seal keeps me from filtering more chakra to you." It took time, pain, and pure, unadulterated hatred combined with crushing despair and desperation to generate 3 taels of chakra for Naruto in that lab. Why couldn't he have learned something about Fuinjutsu before ending up in this world? "Do you know how long it took to give you even 3 taels worth of my power while you were bolted to that table?" The only thing Naruto could do about it was break the seal on the door, but that would only cause the Kyuubi to be released. It would have been useless to try to trick Naruto into thinking that way because he already knew that was what would happen in such a situation. As the Kyuubi went on to explain, "I've tried to give you more. I intended for you to obliterate that Metal Gear creation 4 months ago with the fullest scope of my power that you could muster. And even a matter of weeks ago you could only receive 2 taels in the time provided for me before you calmed yourself." The Kyuubi's attempts to intoxicate Naruto with more power were unsuccessful. "Yondaime Hokage, dang it." Naruto calmly replied, "Okay, I can work with what you gave me though." He possessed a clear balance of focused strength and enraged power when battling Helios. It was flawless. He had to channel that. When he used the chakra to increase his performance, it made his body numb, but it was ideal for something to be used only in dire situations. The Kyuubi scoffed at his remarks, saying, "You had better." Its power was absolute and not just ammo for a weapon. Once Naruto activated the Kyuubi's chakra, there was no working with it. Or rather, it was finding a target and turning them into a victim. And you had better find a way to free yourself from the accursed cowards that won't even face you to bind you to their will. "I will not be the prisoner of a slave," Naruto said. Naruto reassured the Kyuubi, "And you won't be." As he vanished from the sewer of his memory, "Just give me some time." The demon grinned as Naruto vanished from sight. It alluded to the characters who attempted to rule over Naruto as if they had the right to do so, sensing the hatred in its container's heart. That was excellent. Hatred was beneficial. XXX May 2006, Tokyo, Japan. Naruto, 19 years of age. A well-groomed man in a suit stormed through the doorway of the private office of a posh biotechnology company, leaving his several bodyguards at the door with a somber expression on their faces. He marches through the pitch-black office until he comes to a turned-on computer that displays the message that it was just finished uploading something. That wasn't a good idea. Not until the computer was accessed had a notice been sent out indicating that something was going on in the office. The man in the suit received a notification that someone else was using his office computer and he was just about to try to access his work from his phone. That was just not possible, so he went back right away to see what was going on. He quickly browsed the computer's memory to see if there was anything he needed to do. When he clicked on the first significant file to open it, his face twisted horribly. The full screen playing of Rick Astley's "Never Gonna Give You Up" was what he received in place of pages and pages of data on the latest nanotechnological breakthroughs that were supposed to be sent to the highest bidding national army after testing was finished. His bodyguards stormed into the room, pistols out, ready to deal with whatever threat had caused him to yell, only to find him pulling out his own hair and cursing at shadows. His yell of horror and anguish had caused them to do so. They heard muffled laughter and started looking around the office for the source. All they were able to find was a puff of smoke coming from an upper corner of the almost completely dark office. XXX It was always a good idea to visit locations like this early in the evening. Since most people were wrapping up their days, the relaxed atmosphere made it easy for Naruto to slip a clone in and upload all the useful data he could find directly to the Pentagon. After it became outdated, The company would eventually receive its data back. However, that wasn't Naruto's issue. He was given a mission by the Patriots, and that was it. This company had made breakthroughs. The intended capabilities of these new nanomachines included remote hacking into terminals unprepared for such technology, at which, as of right now, none were checking users' vital signs and health remotely, and facilitating communication between users of the same generation of nanomachines without the need for spoken language. They might even aid in wound healing by causing the wounds to coagulate and hasten the healing process. The main thing that convinced him to accept this mission in the first place was that Naruto had been informed that Dr. Clark's 2003 study on him had provided the data used to create the final aspect of the new nanomachines. Initially, it was believed to be an unsuccessful attempt on her part to recreate Naruto's healing factor. However, it was abandoned because it was only possible to heal surface wounds in this manner, not skeletal injuries or conditions like concussions, which Naruto's original healing ability could handle. That was only available to him. This company needed to consider something like the fast wound treatment a breakthrough, so they incorporated that aspect into their nanomachines even without the bones healing and other forms of damage control that Naruto's healing factor handled for him. Their announcement of this generated a great deal of buzz. Other things existed, too, but those were the main advancements over the earlier, less complex nanomachines that could only deliver and administer sugars, adrenaline, and similar substances, as well as limit the recipient's movements by preventing them from firing weapons in places that their control team deemed undesirable. And now that Naruto had taken their data, they had left the company with a full terabyte of a virus that would, whenever they attempted to access any computer in the building, spam "Never Gonna Give You Up" by Rick Astley in its place. The virus prevented them from even exchanging messages within or outside of the building. It was an excellent field test for his new Cage Bunshin experiment. He would utilize his mental lock on a single clone and use it as if it were his own body when he was in a deep state of meditation. Given that his body remained unattended until the clone was vanquished or Naruto merely lost control, it somewhat reminded him of Ino Yamanaka's clan jutsu. Thus, after returning to his own body and sitting in a fairly cozy chair in the building's lobby, Naruto got up and moved toward the elevator while grinning to himself. He was wearing a brown trench coat and sunglasses. It was time to leave that place. Without delay, Naruto entered the highest floor accessible by the elevator and bided his time. When the elevator reached the top floor and opened, Naruto grinned and began singing to himself for self-entertainment. "We're no strangers to love. You know the rules and so do I. A full commitment's what I'm thinking of. You wouldn't get this from any other guy," he said. He found himself staring at a busy hallway where men in black suits were darting here and there, guns blazing, and they could see that Naruto was inside the open elevator door. The boy was singing the virus song and was clearly not supposed to be on that floor, but he didn't even stop singing as they all realized. After a few shots from some jumpy guards, Naruto simply drew his HF blade from behind, hiding it inside his trench coat, and said, "I just want to tell you how I'm feeling. Gotta make you understand." Naruto then proceeded to show off his speed and agility by blocking every bullet that was aimed at him with the HF blade, all the while grinning until he made the decision to charge into the hallway. "Never gonna give up. Never gonna let you down. Never gonna run around and desert you." The men were baffled by Naruto's apparent ability to render their bullets ineffective with just his sword and the fact that he wasn't even killing them. "Never gonna make you cry. Never gonna say goodbye. Never gonna tell a lie and hurt you," was his way of saying, as he would simply dance through their bullets until he was close enough to smash them with the hilt or kick the hell out of them, sending them into the walls with enough force to crack. His voice never changed pitch as he entered the stairwell at the end of the hall to ascend to the roof. By the time he finished the first verse, he had beaten his way through the entire hall and had defeated every guard without a mark on him. The best idea he'd ever had was to have his clones fire blanks at him until he was able to block the shots. Gray Fox, eat your heart out. He was still grinning when he got to the roof and saw the helicopter that the man in the office had used to get back to the office in a panic. Once again, Naruto danced with his sword. "We've known each other for so long. Your heart's been aching but you're too shy to say it. Inside we both know what's been going on. We know the game and we're gonna play it." The 5 guards surrounding the helicopter noticed him as he continued to sing, and they opened fire, rendering Naruto virtually useless. Naruto was approaching them faster than anything they had ever seen. The sound of the metal scraping against the roof, combined with his red eyes from the chakra, did nothing to calm the roof guards as he dragged his HF blade across the ground, drawing the last of the Kyuubi's chakra and channeling it into his own killing intent. They already knew that bullets wouldn't harm Naruto, so the closer he got, the worse the feeling got. And if you ask me how I'm feeling, don't tell me you're too blind to see, Naruto said. The guards were so terrified that they fainted within seconds of reaching the helicopter itself. Naruto intended to kill, but only the bravest warriors could ignore his killing intent. Even a few real security guards could not compare to that level. Naruto started the helicopter and took off from the building's roof, humming the chorus to himself. "Colonel Jackson, I finished my mission," he said, putting his hand to his ear after being satisfied that he had left more than enough space between himself and the building. After a brief delay, Jackson's voice on his own codec implant finally answered, saying, "That was fast. You were only gone for 2 days this time. You guys dropped me off near Australia. How long did you think I'd take?" Naruto remarked, wiping the makeup from his cheeks to reveal his whisker marks. "I didn't have to cross an entire ocean or continent this time either. Longer than 2 days. Goddamn you, Rapture. I swear you're more trouble than you're worth most of the time." Jackson replied by grumbling, "Your cover story to the rest of the unit, your extra mission says that you're supposed to be gone for the rest of the week testing the Japan Self-Defense Forces with a fake attack. You can't just show up a third of the week early. Keep your ass in Japan, we'll come to you." He claimed that Naruto had hampered his reason. With an indignant sniff, Naruto said, "I'm heading to Sapporo right now, so keep your pants on, damn it." Perhaps he would just half-ass it and terrorize the Hokkaido governor and be done with it. "Fine," he said with a roll of his eyes, not that Jackson could see it. "I was just telling you that I knocked out my main mission for the you-know-who. I haven't even done the test attack on anything in Japan yet. Just watch the news, you'll know when I do it. Just don't kill any civilians, Rapture, you know the drill." As a result of his constant discontent on bases and aircraft carriers, Naruto's codename in Dead Cell was assigned to him, Rapture. He started to laugh and smile as soon as he was in the field, even though he was being shot at. And despite the fact that the tests were supposed to be genuine, Naruto truly took the advice to kill as few people as possible, even active soldiers, during his test attacks, in contrast to the other members of Dead Cell. His codename also came from the way he always appeared to be waiting for something, as though he was meticulously getting ready for something that was bound to happen because of his ongoing training, development of his unique abilities, and even acquisition of more traditional skills. Naruto casually said, "I never kill anyone unless it's one of my special missions." He concluded on a positive note, saying, "I'll check back in later. Enjoy dealing with the others, Colonel." This was the unit's absolute no-no in Dead Cell and possibly the only tangible method of operation. They were not allowed to inflict any harm on civilians during their assaults or other operations. Colonel Jackson, more or less the den mother to a nest of lunatics, joked, "Even though you're the only one gone, it's like a load off my mind to not have to look after all of you at once." Naruto was laughably the most sane of them all. The less of you all around, the easier you all are to deal with. It was beyond him how a regular guy like Jackson could keep them all in line. He served as their handler in essence, and for someone so high-ranked without any unique powers, he managed to get them to move along fairly well with his advice to don't get yourself killed or captured. After 6 months, Naruto was able to prove, through espionage with his clones, that neither he nor any of his allies were Patriot stooges. Dead Cell was just their convenient means of monitoring him. "It makes sense," Naruto remarked, before shutting off the codec and planning his little attack. "You know, I think there are some people that haven't seen me in person in a while." He grinned to himself as he considered how he would handle the situation. "Either Wolf or Meryl are going to kick my ass when they see me again." He sighed in jest.
I will continue the story in next part. Till then, we weeb offline.